Chapter 881 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 6. Through Pupation and Purification. Although Xionghui cannot use soul waves while awake, his reaction speed is obviously much faster than before. He wanted to practice his reaction speed in commanding mecha battles by commanding the insect swarm. But there was an obvious communication barrier between humans and the insect swarm, so the speed of command transmission could not keep up at all. You know, in modern interstellar warfare, timely issuance of instructions is very critical. What Xionghui wants to do is to issue his orders to every combat unit in his mecha battle group as quickly as possible. Therefore, it is obviously not possible to train through insect swarms. After a day of contact, Xionghui finally gave up and returned a swarm of insects to Annie, and asked, "What should we do?" Xionghui said, "Tomorrow is a day off. It's time to continue the second round of purification." "Mom, I want to have a mecha." Annie nodded and said, "With your current situation, you may not be able to get a mecha. So let me come forward. I believe Dai Lizzie will not deny me face. You have a good rest tomorrow and then purify. I will go just in time for Dai Lizzie." "Want? Mom, it's best to use a combat level mecha." "No problem." After agreeing, Xionghui Bian went to rest. After the 3-day rest period, Xionghui began the second round of pupation and purification. During this purification process, Xionghui gained a lot. That is, he could not only use soul waves, but also quickly and comprehensively survey the situation around him. It's like someone who closes his eyes and suddenly opens them, can see everything in front of him at a glance. And Xionghui's quick inspection is more detailed than ordinary inspection. His fine inspection can cover a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers. Within a range of 1,000 kilometers, he could observe every detail of the scene in detail. He couldn't believe it himself. Although the soul wave flight speed is far less than that of the Zerg, it can quickly detect the surrounding environment, including the situation of oneself and teammates, as well as important enemy situations. With the soul wave method, Xionghui faced a line of defense. He could quickly grasp all the details within a 120 degrees fan-shaped viewing angle and 1,000 kilometers away. Although this speed can be achieved quickly by a high-speed computer, if the computer is responsible for detection and the driver is able to control it, the speed will be significantly reduced. Therefore, it is better to let the computer control it than to directly control it yourself, which will be faster. After grasping the information ahead, he turned around again and faced the 4 o'clock direction. There was another 120 degrees fan-shaped perspective, allowing him to quickly examine all the details within 1,000 kilometers. Turning to the 8 o'clock direction, it is also a 120 degrees fan-shaped viewing angle. 3 directions, just enough to observe the surrounding situation. However, this universe is 3-dimensional, which is different from ground warfare. It is enough to have information on a horizontal plane. Information in the universe comes from up, down, left, right, front, and in all directions. Even so, once Xionghui has the ability to examine in detail, he can quickly grasp all the situations above and below as long as he turns around a few more times. In addition, there is a supercomputer early warning mechanism for controlling mechas. When encountering an enemy situation, the supercomputer will issue an early warning as soon as possible. There are 2 things he wants to do now. First, whether he can use the soul wave to examine it in detail while he is awake. The second is whether this ability can be improved in a larger space. He kept using this ability to practice, and after 3 days, he finally came to the conclusion that if he wanted to improve his ability, he needed a higher level of purification. The current level of purification he is undergoing is the White Tiger level. If he wants to go to the next level, he needs to at least undergo the Vermilion Bird level of purification and pupation. The White Tiger level purification time is 3 days, and the Suzaku level purification time is 1 month. After waking up, he emerged from the cocoon and saw Annie staring at him with a smile. Before she could speak, Annie said first, "I had a big fight with Dai Lizzie, that Beachy, and finally gave me a mecha, a war riding level." Xionghui stepped forward, hugged Annie and said, "Thank you, Mom." Xionghui has never been good at expressing emotions. This sudden hug made Annie stun for a moment. Annie patted Xionghui's back gently and said, "I'm your mother. How can I thank you?" Xionghui let go of Annie and said, "I want to continue purifying. Do you still want to purify?" Xionghui nodded and said, "Well, I have already figured out some skills, so I still need more advanced practice." "More advanced? Do you want to perform Suzaku level purification?" "Yes, Suzaku level. Starting in 3 days. Mom, if you work harder, ask Dai Lizzie for a green onion. Green onion is the common name of the warlord level mecha. Because the word warlord and green onion dipping sauce are homophonic, the pilots nicknamed him Green Onion. Shall we? Annie said. This may disappoint you. When I approached Dai Lizzie, I directly asked her to give me a warrior level mecha. Her answer was that one step is necessary. Come on! Before you get the combat level driver's license, you cannot skip the level to drive the warrior level driver's license, even if you are studying and training. Xionghui nodded and said, Okay, I'll take the driver's license test later. No matter what level of driver's license it is, it must be tested in the military. Although Xionghui still retains his mercenary military status, he has not yet accepted an employer, so he cannot take the test now. So he wanted to figure out the soul wave as quickly as possible, and then go to verify it level by level. So for the next 3 days, he planned to rest today and start training to pilot the battle class mecha that Annie was going to bring tomorrow. After resting that day, and getting ready the next day, Xionghui boarded the battle class mecha, connected his personal computer, Sister Ran, and took over the mecha's host system. The mental connection with the mecha host was quickly successful. After looking around, the mecha host displayed the observed information on the observation panel one by one. Therefore, through the cabin observation window, you could observe the surroundings with skills and see the real-time situation of the mecha. Xionghui piloted the mecha and flew out of the biological battleship, flying in space. Not long after flying out, he suddenly felt that his soul wave could actually be used. This surprised him so much. This kind of soul wave was different from the Zerg. Instead of the soul wave flying forward, it quickly scanned the surrounding situation, including every detail. It's just that at the time of purification, the distance was 1,000 kilometers. But now the distance is only more than 300 kilometers. Even so, it's already pretty good. Through mental communication, give instructions to the mecha AI. 1,000 drones were all released to launch a simulated attack on the biological battleship. Chapter 882 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 7. Xionghui started a simulated war, setting a biological warship as an imaginary enemy. And he drove a battle-class mecha to attack the biological warship. There are 100,000 plus enemy units in the simulated battle, while your own units are only 1,000. Because there are only 1,000 drones in the war cavalry class mecha. So this is a battle of great disparity in strength. Although the result of the battle was Xionghui's defeat, he could clearly feel that it was easier to control a mecha with 1,000 units of drones than the previous 100-unit warrior-level mecha. What is certain is that this has a lot to do with his development of soul waves. Can quickly understand the situation of the entire battlefield, including every corner and every detail. In space, you can see a warrior-class mecha flying back and forth in front of the Shenmue battleship, and its 1,000 drones flying with it, doing various tumbling movements, and heading towards the battleship shines a low-energy laser. In fact, it is a simulated battle. But to the outside world, it is not obvious that this is a simulated battle exercise. After many rounds of exercises, Xionghui summed up a lot of experience, and was able to master the perfect combination of soul wave and mecha AI host very skillfully. The next purification needs to be done even more, and the war-riding mecha is completely unable to meet his needs. At the end of 3 days, prepare to undergo a month-long Suzaku level purification. Before the purification started, Annie said, Suzaku level purification will increase the size, but you are not a Zerg, so you must purify it at the same time as a soldier insect. Don't worry, I have implanted comprehension spores into the chrysalis, and the insects purified together will not eat you. Xionghui smiled and said, Why am I worried about Mom? Just as he was about to enter the chrysalis, Fukue suddenly arrived, reluctant to leave. Xionghui consoled him. It will be out in a month, so there is nothing to worry about. It's just that I can't connect to you for a month. Okay, I'll figure it out in a month. Then, a month-long purification began. Looking at the knotted insect chrysalis, Fukue shed tears, and Annie asked, Do you really like Xiaowei? Fukue nodded, and said, But you know? Well, Fukue nodded and said, I know that brother Hui likes that sleeping beauty. I will wait for him. I will wait for 10 years, 20 years, or even longer. And sighed and said, You are so infatuated. Fukue didn't know the reason why Xionghui was saving money. If she knew that he was hibernating with the so-called Sleeping Beauty in her mouth, would she still wait for him? Fukue returned to the headquarters and continued her position as a trainee commander. A month later, the purification was completed, and Xiong Hui and Chong Chong came out together. However, Xiong Hui was still the same Xiong Hui. The insect had turned into a small bird, a high-level Suzaku-level soldier insect. He fluttered his wings and flew away. After a month of Suzaku-level purification, Xiong Hui's understanding of soul waves has reached a new level. But he has new requirements. One is that a higher level of pupation and purification is required, and the other is that the pilot of the warrior-level mecha is required. The current warrior-level mecha simply cannot meet the requirements. But if you want to drive a warrior-level mecha, you first need to obtain a warrior-level driver's license, and then obtain a warrior-level driver's license. Xiong Hui expressed his thoughts, and he thought for a while and said, if you want to proceed to the next level, which is the Azure Dragon level purification, you need to rest for at least a month. I will go to Dialyse to see if she can arrange an opportunity for you to take the exam. After saying that, she left the biological battleship and went to find Dialyse. Xiong Hui continued to conduct mecha drills and experiments. 3 days later, Dialyse came back. This also made Xiong Hui feel puzzled. It actually took 3 days to find Dialyse. During the past 3 days, Hukue connected with him and told him that he was busy now and could not come to see him, so he could only communicate with him online. But 3 days later, when An came back, she had a gloomy look on her face. Xiong Hui asked worriedly, how about it? Does she disagree? This Beachy, Annie scolded. Every time you have to argue with me for a long time. You can't agree happily. But don't worry. I have convinced her to let you take the exam. You will be accepted to work in the 95th Fleet Mecha Flight Test Laboratory and undergo flight testing of new mechas. In this case, you will have to take the exams for the War Cavalry level and the Warrior level. The transfer order may be sent to your personal computer later. Sure enough, in the evening, Xiong Hui received a transfer order on his personal computer, asking him to report to the 95th Fleet Flight Laboratory early tomorrow morning. The next day, Xiong Hui said goodbye to An and went to report. For this reason, An was very reluctant. Xiong Hui could only continue to comfort her and said, I will try to get the driver's license as soon as possible, and then apply for it and continue. Purification test of the Azure Dragon level. Taking the commuter spaceship, I left the biological battleship, Annie, and the insect swarm's defense zone, and headed to the defense zone where the 95th Fleet was located. The laboratory is on the second ship, and Hukue still can't be together. When we arrived at the flight test laboratory on the second ship, what we didn't expect was that the comrades, who didn't have a laboratory, laughed at him, because the test pilots in the laboratory are all warrior level pilots. He is the only one who is warrior level, which is 2 levels lower. Xiong Hui was not discouraged and said, the general level is nothing special. I can still fly. It's just that the examination process is complicated. You have to go through it level by level, and it also delays time. If there weren't some complicated village restrictions, I can get a warrior level driver's license now. A sergeant said, we are not laughing at your low rank, but we think you are qualified for the position of test pilot. You fled the battle in the first battle. All your comrades died, but you are alive. What did I die for you? My comrades feel unworthy. Xiong Hui was too lazy to explain to him, and silently found his place to rest, waiting for the exam to be arranged for him the next day. The next day, I met the examiner and asked him if he needed to study for a period of time. What's there to learn? Xiong Hui sneered. I don't even care about a mere battle cavalry level. My goal is to be a battle commander. Young man. The examiner smiled. You are quite crazy. Many people who take the exam here are as crazy as you, but none of them can pass the War Master level exam. They are so crazy. I am so confident. The Battle Knight exam was indeed very easy for him. Whether it was theoretical knowledge or practical operations, he passed it easily. But it takes 10 days to get the driver's license. Xiong Hui is not in a hurry. He just wants to take the warrior level exam as soon as possible. Chapter 883 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 8. New Gaia Navy. The second ship of the 95th Fleet. In the inner harbor of Tiangang, Xiong Hui is about to board a warrior level mecha and accept the warrior level pilot assessment, which is the so-called B-Photo. The Invigilator and several officers came to watch. One officer said, Corporal Xiong Hui, you are the youngest B certificate candidate in so many years. In terms of biological age, Xiong Hui is only 19 years old now. In New Gaia's mecha assessment system, After each level of assessment is completed, one must have at least 2 years of driving experience, a range of 150 million kilometers, and 1,000 hours of flight time, and no major flight accidents. All 4 of these must be met only if they meet the standards can accept the assessment of the next level, calculated based on driving experience. Xiong Hui has to be at least 22 years old before he can take the B license, which is a warrior-level pilot's license. As for range and flight time, he is even worse. That's why the officer said this. Before Xiong Hui could answer, another invigilator said, "The ancestor is the ancestor, and he has many more privileges than us. He is also the adopted son of the queen. So can we not have a smooth journey?" Xiong Hui thought, "I will show you my skills later, and you will know." But he still couldn't hold it back and said, "What's the use of privileges? The key is technology. Later I will ask the leaders to see what technology is. Then you can talk about privileges." Yo, that's pretty crazy. Xiong Hui didn't bother to argue and said, "Then I'll show you how crazy I am." Just as he was about to log in, Hu Kuei suddenly ran over and shouted from afar, "Brother Hui, wait for me." Xiong Hui stopped and waited for her arrival. Hu Kuei ran up to him and gasped, "Fortunately, I almost missed it. Brother Hui, come on. I thought it was such a big deal." Xiong Hui said, "Is this all?" "Yeah. I have to come cheer you on. It's just a small test. There's no need to be so exaggerated." "A small test?" Hu Kuei said with a surprised expression. "Do you know how old your youngest pilot is in New Gaia?" "How old?" 25 years old. And this was achieved 100 years ago. It's been 100 years. And no one has broken this record. At that time, because I woke up late, my ultimate goal was the War Master. Just wait. Yes, I believe that Brother Hui is the best. That is required. Farewell to Hu Kuei. Xiong Hui boarded the mecha under Hu Kuei's expectant eyes. The starting mode is a battle armor, which is a robot. Due to its huge size, it is hung on the outside of the battleship. There is an entrance on the back to facilitate the driver's entry and exit. The warrior-level mecha can carry 10,000 attack drones, so it is huge, with a height of more than 500 meters in robot mode. Therefore, such a tall figure can only be mounted on the outside of the battleship. Enter the cockpit, put on the inner armor, connect the pipes, and check the status of the mecha. Sister Ran. "My brother here," the individual computer AI replied. "Take over the mecha host." "I'm sorry, brother. I can't take over. There is a firewall, and I can't break through it." "Okay," Xiong Hui added. "Bring it back, and you can help me convey the instructions to the mecha host." "Okay, brother." Everything was ready. The mecha disconnected and flew into space. The examiner's voice came from the channel. "Xiong Hui, you can do the tutorial flight now." Xiong Hui sneered and said, "Do you have to follow the tutorial to fly? Do you have to follow the tutorial to fly in battle?" "Sister Ran, let the mecha release all the drones and fly CS-24. CS is a clockwise spiral flight. There are many ways, and number 24 is one of them." "Okay, brother," Sister Ran replied. "The order has been passed on, but there is a delay." "Damn it," Xiong Hui cursed. "Execute it immediately." 10,000 drones flew out of the mecha like bees exploding their nests, and began to fly around the mecha in the 24 CS manner. In mecha combat, verbal command speed will be very slow, so it is basically done with gestures. At this moment, Xiong Hui, who was suspended in the cockpit, began to issue command gestures. According to the gestures, the AI instructed the mecha to make a sharp turn and fly towards the bottom of the battleship. Spinning rapidly, the examiner's voice came from the channel. "Examinee Xiong Hui, what are you doing? Don't make such big moves." "Chief," Xiong Hui said, "I'm not taking the civil aviation test. I'm taking the mecha test. It doesn't do much, so why call it a mecha? Quick, tell me the location of the shooting range." The examiner sighed from the channel. "The distance is 5.3 million kilometers. The location coordinates have been sent to your system. The range is 500,000 kilometers in diameter. Please release the target," Xiong Hui said as he flew towards the shooting range. Now in fighter mode. "It's not time to release the target yet. This assessment mainly tests simulated combat," Xiong Hui said. "If the shooting range was a battlefield, would you photograph me in an empty place? I don't have to know where the enemy is, but I have to know where the enemy is." After a moment of silence, the examiner finally said, "The target has entered the battlefield. The number, combat units, and combat effectiveness are unknown. Your assessment goal is to destroy 10,000 local units and retain 50% of your combat effectiveness before you can leave the shooting range. Complete the assessment at the same time. Moreover, friendly forces will join you before you leave the battlefield. You must protect the friendly pilots from dying. Otherwise, you will fail the assessment. How many friendly troops are there? Xiong Hui Wei. Depending on the speed of your battle. The slower the speed, the more friendly troops there are. And the more friendly troops there are, the more enemy units there will be. So the battle needs to end as quickly as possible. Understood. He quickly arrived at the shooting range. Xiong Hui's soul wave had already sensed that there was a warship about 50,000 kilometers away from him. He immediately gave instructions with gestures, and 1,000 drones opened the wormhole and teleported over instantly. After 1,000 drones quickly teleported through the wormhole, they illuminated a beam of light at the battleship. Since it was an exam, the particle beam was of low energy, could only be irradiated, and had no harmful effect. However, the simulation test system would determine that this beam was lethal. So after one irradiation, the target warship was declared destroyed by the system. It was defeated without even releasing a carrier-based aircraft. Since it was judged to have been destroyed, it could only leave the shooting range silently. The voice of an officer named Chong'ing came from the channel. How did this guy do it? After the 1,000 drones were obtained, they did not fly towards the mecha. Instead, they all dispersed and flew everywhere in the shooting range. One of the officers who was invigilating the exam said, "What kind of medicine is this guy selling in his gourd?" At this moment, Xiong Hui suddenly opened the wormhole and plunged in with his mecha. Chapter 884 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 9. The shooting range was also the venue for Xiong Hui's B-Photo, the practical test for the warrior-level mecha pilot assessment. The examiner only released 10,000 combat units according to the scale of previous examinations. But who knew that Xiong Hui would deal with them all in less than a minute? Of course, this is a simulated actual combat, and the target cannot be destroyed in real life. But the actual combat effect can be evaluated based on the test content. Now that all targets were solved, Xiong Hui began to tighten the released drones and prepared to leave the battlefield. His battle ended too quickly, which shocked all the examiners present, the officers who came to observe, and Hu Kuei. They simply didn't know that Xiong Hui would use soul waves to understand the real-time battle situation of the entire battlefield as quickly as possible, so he could make judgments and tactical deployments as quickly as possible. So it ends very quickly. The examiner said on the channel, "Candidate Xiong Hui, 100,000 enemy units are entering the battlefield." "I'm sorry, Chief," Xiong Hui said. "The battle is over, and I am evacuating the battlefield. 2 friendly warrior-level mechas are entering the battlefield. Please go and assist the friendly forces in their retreat. Unless they are stupid," Xiong Hui said. "The battle is over. Let them withdraw on their own. I have 1 minute to withdraw from the battlefield and cannot return. Candidate Xiong Hui, I order you to return to the battlefield immediately to assist your comrades. I'm sorry. I have finished the exam. Please come out on your own." What I want to say is, which idiot asked this question? If this is a commander, such a wrong command will be sent to a military court. But Xiong Hui was right. He could complete the assessment as quickly as possible, so the examiner would not give him additional tests. Moreover, his test results were very good. None of his drones were damaged, but he was given enemy troops were destroyed with devastating effect. This is also the best assessment result ever. The examiner was at a loss for words. If he wanted to say something else, Xiong Hui had already flown out of the examination room, which was the shooting range, and was at the other end of the shooting range facing the battleship. In order to prevent returning to the shooting range, Xiong Hui piloted the mecha and returned to the shooting range. The drones that were not recovered in time also quickly flew out of the shooting range, circled the shooting range, and flew towards the main body of the mecha. Therefore, it is already unreasonable to want him to return to the shooting range for examination at this time. Flying out of the shooting range means the test is over. His result surprised everyone. Xiong Hui didn't know that on the Galaxy 1, the flagship of the new Gaia First Fleet, his examination process and results alarmed the Commander-in-Chief Dai Lizhi in the command cabin of the number 1 ship of the First Fleet. Dai Lizhi watched the examination scene accompanied by a group of commanders. Dai Lizhi crossed her shoulders and said, "You can't tell, but our ancestors are quite fond of each other." An officer said, "You are just too arrogant." Dai Lizhi shook her head and said, "I don't think so. He has this ability and qualifications. Think about it. In the entire New Gaia, who is more qualified than him? This is really not the case. Some officers expressed dissatisfaction. And Dialysi said, inform the examiner and ask him not to embarrass him anymore. And declare the exam over. Yes, Your Excellency. Another person said, can we give him a certificate? Dialysi did not answer immediately, but was thinking. Everyone was looking at her, waiting for her decision. After a while, Daisley said, let him come to the high command. Then for what reason? An officer asked. What reason? There is no reason. Let him start as a trainee intelligence officer. But at the assessment site, Xionghui had already driven the mecha back and summoned all the drones into place, driving the mecha into the sky harbor. The connection was successful. The back hatch was opened, and the airlock passage was connected to enter the interior of the battleship. Arriving in front of the examiners, Fukue ran over from afar and opened her arms. Xionghui wanted to open more, but she was too quick. She hugged him and lifted her legs in excitement. Xionghui felt embarrassed. He had no interest in Fukue in the first place, and there were so many people here. Then he patted him gently and whispered, come down quickly. Someone is here. Fukue came down and said excitedly, Brother Hui, you are great. You actually passed the warrior level assessment so easily. I admire you so much. It's just a small case. Nothing to envy. The examiner came over and said, Supreme Order, you should report to the number 1 ship of the First Fleet now. And there will be someone there to pick you up. Ina number 1? Xionghui, who had always been very calm, was still a little surprised. Ina number 1 was the flagship of the entire New Gaia Navy, and the commander-in-chief was on this battleship. The examiner said, how many Galaxy ones do you think we have in New Gaia? But why? Where does it come from? The higher-ups ordered you to go, so you just go. What about my driver's license? When will it be issued? I don't know. It depends on what the higher-ups mean. If you are asked to go, you can go now. Seeing that the results of the inquiry could not come out, Xionghui planned to go to the first ship. Fukue stopped him and said, Brother Hui, why can't we be together again? Wherever it is. It's not all about serving New Gaia. Fukue sent him to Tiangang and said along the way, Brother Hui, I'm very optimistic about you. I didn't expect you to be promoted so soon. It's hard to say what's next, Xionghui said. As an old man who is out of tune with society, and my special relationship with the Zerg Queen, many people are jealous of me. And it also makes it difficult for me to develop in the military. These are not problems, Fukue said. Believe me, as long as you have the ability, you can survive and rise to great heights. But let's change this. It's not that Xionghui doesn't have his ambitions. It's just that he is relatively low-key and doesn't want people to know that his life plan is to hibernate with Bao Ran. In that case, it may be misunderstood. So he won't say it. Good. When they arrived at Tiangang and were about to board the commuter spaceship to the first ship, Xionghui said, Xiao Kui, you work hard in the fleet, and don't think about it all day long. You can also break into a new world of your own. I'm not thinking blindly, Fukue said. I am an engineer. I have no parents. And I only know you. I have only 2 goals in this life. One is to serve New Gaia, and the other is to be with you. The so-called engineering people are children conceived by machine pregnancy under the family planning program. They have parents, but they are transparent, so they do not know who their parents are. Therefore, such people are called engineers. And the so-called engineers account for a large proportion in New Gaia, more than 50%. Seeing that Fukue was confessing her feelings to him again, Xionghui really wanted to reject her face to face, but he was afraid of hurting her, so he didn't know how to tell her. After hesitating for a while, he still couldn't say anything, so he boarded the spacecraft without saying a word. Chapter 885 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 10. The First Fleet and the 95th Fleet are not in the same defense zone, nor are they in the same quadrant. They cannot fly directly between them, and wormhole transmission requires too much energy. So the commuter spacecraft to the First Fleet costs a lot of money. Zhou Zhang just arrived. When he arrived at the number 1 skyport of the first ship, he was indeed received by someone, who took him directly to the headquarters of the Galaxy number 1. When I arrived at the headquarters, I was assigned a position as an intelligence officer. The so-called intelligence officers in the Battleship Command Department are tasked with collecting and summarizing various intelligence data on battleships, fleets, space, enemy situations, etc., and then conducting manual analysis and comparing it with computer analysis. and then reporting to the higher-level intelligence officers and commanders. Xiong Hui asked about the B photo, and that he was going back to conduct purification experiments. But after thinking about it, he was still serving in the army, retaining his position as a mercenary, and might even be promoted to an officer. If officers were promoted, there was a possibility of salary increases. So he gave up the opportunity to react and settled down to be his little intelligence agent. So he just took up the post and started working without any hesitation. As an intelligence agent, he was not promoted to an officer and remained at the rank of corporal. In the headquarters, there were many people who were sergeants, and he was not the only one. In peacetime, intelligence agents cannot be idle. They must constantly collect intelligence and be able to detect dangerous situations in a timely manner. The work system is adopted in 3 shifts, with each working 8 hours followed by a 16-hour break. Hu Kuei would always connect with him to chat with him. Sometimes, when he seemed bored at work, Hu Kuei would also connect with him. 3 months later, it was Xiong Hui's turn to be on duty. After a rest, he came to his workplace, sat down, and looked at the data scrolling on multiple screens. The collection of intelligence is mainly done by computers, and computers are also used for analysis. However, computers are computers after all and cannot be as logical as humans. Therefore, humans are still needed to perform manual analysis and discover problems that computers cannot. If there is no war, then such work is basically very idle or boring. So Xiong Hui is very bored at the moment. He sits in front of his post, connects his personal computer to the armor host, and puts the computer on the host. If there is anything unusual in the collected information, notify yourself immediately. The battleship's host cannot be taken over casually, so individual computers cannot take over the battleship's host. In the command headquarters, there are not many people working in posts. Most of them are intelligence officers, and they are also collecting intelligence. Xiong Hui was bored, so he used soul waves to detect the surrounding environment. After continuous efforts, his current soul wave detection range is 100,000 kilometers. This distance may seem very far, but for the fleet in the universe, it is simply insignificant. Hu Kuei suddenly connected. Why? Brother Hui? What are you doing? On duty. You should know. I want to go to a ship. Isn't it good for you to be on the 95th ship? Xiong Hui said. Even if you come to the first ship, you may not be able to come to the number 1 ship. Even if you are to the number 1 ship, you may not be able to come to the command headquarters. If I get on the first ship, I can really go to the headquarters, Hu Kuei said with a smile. The problem now is how to get to the first ship. How can I get on the first ship after I get to the first ship? Xiong Hui suddenly fell silent. He thought it would be better to make it clear to Hu Kuei so that she would stop being obsessed with him and quickly find someone who suits him. But he himself was determined to wait for Bao Ran to wake up. Hu Kuei, Xiong Hui said suddenly. What's wrong? Brother Hui? Why did you suddenly call me by my full name? Is there anything important to say? This is Hu Kuei, Xiong Hui was about to say, but suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Hu Kuei asked. There's a problem, Xiong Hui said, stood up from his position, and came to the nearby position. In that position was a female intelligence agent, who was dozing off at the moment. Xiong Hui patted her and said, Wake up quickly. There's something going on. Then he woke up the others and said, If there is a situation, everyone should wake up. What's going on? Several people asked impatiently. If there was a situation, the computer would first call the police. But it didn't. Xiong Hui pointed to the virtual general map of the starry sky, pointed at several points in it, and said, Did you see it? There are spatial disturbances in these places. An intelligence officer said, Ancestor, this is normal. Okay. Our empty town barrier cannot be strictly tight. There will always be some slight disturbances due to the influence of celestial bodies. It is normal. Xiong Hui put his hands on his hips and looked at the space scenery outside the huge porthole window. Then looked at the starry sky map, shook his head and said, It's not that simple. It will never be that simple. Another intelligence officer said, Ancestor, don't worry so much. Just go chat with your little girlfriend. Xiong Hui said, If the enemy uses the law of disturbance to find the location of the flagship, we will be in trouble. It's not as mysterious as you said. Right. Did you see this point? This point. Xiong Hui pointed to a point in the 3-dimensional starry sky map and said, This point is only about 90,000 kilometers away from the flagship. If this distance is placed in space, it is equivalent to its under the nose. At this point, something will definitely come over in a while, Xionghui said. No. Sound the alarm immediately. Team leader. Will you sound the alarm? The intelligence team leader on duty was a second lieutenant. And he said, if there is no enemy situation, just sound the alarm at will. Xionghui, do you know what the consequences will be? What are the consequences? Xionghui asked. If there is no enemy situation, we are just making a false alarm. But if there is enemy situation and you don't stop, we will cause losses, and it will be the loss of the flagship. Team leader, can you take the responsibility? Is this responsibility? The team leader hesitated. He was also frightened by Xionghui's words. Sound the alarm. Team leader, Xionghui said. If something happens, I'll take the responsibility. The team leader sighed and sounded the alarm. Immediately, the alarm sounded loudly in the battleship, and a mechanical female voice began to give voice reminders. Level 3 combat readiness status. If suspicious situations are found, relevant personnel should enter combat positions immediately. Why is it only a level 3 alert? Xionghui asked. This requires a level 1 combat alert. The team leader said. Isn't it true that we haven't discovered the enemy situation yet? It's just your suspicion. Xionghui looked at the status of the battleship again. At this moment, Galaxy No. 1 was leading its fleet at a position relatively close to the star. If an enemy used the space disturbance to break in, it could quickly replenish energy. Thus, as a result, it is virtually difficult to eliminate them. Just when she didn't know what to do, Dai Lizi, who was resting, said a question. What's going on? Why is the level 3 alert issued? Chapter 886 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 11. As an intelligence officer on duty in the command module of the No. 1 ship headquarters, Xionghui discovered suspicious phenomena. At his insistence, the leader of the intelligence team activated a 3-level alarm. Level 3 is only the combat readiness level, so it does not require all combatants to enter combat positions. It only reminds a few commanders to pay attention. So this also alarmed the commander-in-chief Dai Lizi. Dai Lizi, who was resting, said a question. What's going on? Why is the level 3 alert issued? Before the team leader could speak, Xionghui took the lead and said, I discovered a very suspicious space disturbance and suggested issuing a level 1 combat alert. Everyone thought I was making a fuss out of a molehill. The team leader was forced by me to choose to issue a level 3 combat alert. Level alert. After hearing what he said, several people quietly waved their fists at him. But Xionghui just pretended not to see them. Dai Lizi asked, Why do you think there is danger? Xionghui only said 3 words, Soul Wave. As a result, everyone laughed. Some people laughed and said, Soul Wave? Are you mistaken? This is only found in the Zerg race. It is superstitious to humans. You actually use it to tell information. Dai Lizi smiled and said, Xionghui, since you have been learning soul waves from Lucy before, you may have hallucinations because of this. I will not hold you responsible this time. Go back to your post and work hard. Everyone should return to their posts. And those who are resting should go and rest. But Xionghui wanted to say something else. But Dai Lizi and all the officials did not listen to his explanation and forcibly turned off the alarm system. Xionghui was frustrated, and several intelligence agents on duty in the headquarters were also complaining. But just after the alarm was triggered, within 3 seconds, the alarm started blaring again, and it was a level 1 combat alarm. The group leader shouted, Who? Another intelligence officer said. Team leader. Look. Computer intelligence showed that a large number of enemy fleets appeared in several spatial disturbance places, flying rapidly towards a fleet, and began to launch high-energy particle beams towards the fleet. In modern interstellar warfare, you hit when you see it. So when the intelligence agents in the command headquarters saw beams of light coming from them, they marked that the warship had been hit. And this kind of hit is still without a shield, because opening the shield consumes a huge amount of energy. In non-combat conditions, warships and other units will choose to close the shield to save energy. And this is the situation at this moment. Therefore, after encountering attacks from unknown enemies, many units were continuously destroyed. However, Xionghui and a group of intelligence agents in the headquarters found that they were unable to contact several important officials in the headquarters. Xionghui shouted, There must be signal interference. Open the shield quickly. The battleships and other units in the fleet opened their shields one by one. Large numbers of enemies rushed in from multiple space disturbance points, and they were all near the first ship. Due to the sudden outbreak of the war, the number 1 ship Galaxy Number 1 was attacked and damaged. Not only was it unable to connect to important officials such as the Commander-in-Chief, but it was also impossible to issue instructions to the ship and other ships. When encountering such an emergency, if the commander cannot be contacted, the personnel on duty at the command headquarters, regardless of their military rank, can issue instructions to the entire fleet. But at this time, they cannot issue them. Another situation is that when other warships and units in the fleet cannot receive the flagship order, they can make their own decisions. So at this time, the number 1 ship Galaxy Number 1 could only activate its shield, and all the mechas were the last to be dispatched, and they were still in disarray. Although the mechas of other ships were released earlier, they were also relatively chaotic. In less than 3 minutes, the entire airspace was filled with enemy flying saucers, flying everywhere and densely irradiated with particle beams. The number 1 ship, Galaxy Number 1, also received a certain amount of trauma, and it was slightly better after the shield was turned on. Xionghui looked at the chaotic battlefield in space and said, "What should we do? The team leader and the leaders are not here. You can issue the order. Otherwise, it will be too chaotic." "How to issue it?" the team leader asked. "The order cannot be sent out at all. The host shows that the system is undergoing online maintenance to find the cause of the failure." The battleship kept shaking. Xionghui was really worried that the artificial gravity would get out of control at this moment. In that case, people and objects would float. The battleship was very large, and many people inside would be injured. So the best way is for everyone to secure themselves to prevent falls and impacts caused by the disappearance of gravity. "The life-sustaining warehouse," Xionghui said. "Everyone should be notified to enter the life-sustaining warehouse." This reminded him of 3.5 years ago, when he had just woken up and saw many people entering the life-sustaining warehouse to protect themselves. At that time, he was in Galaxy Number 1, and it was also in this command module that he saw Dai Lizi and others in the life-sustaining cabin. A life-sustaining warehouse is used to protect people during battles, or when vehicle units accelerate significantly. There is also liquid in the life-sustaining cabin to soak people in. This is done to ensure that they will not be injured under ultra-high acceleration. In the life support cabin of the commander, the battleship can also be commanded. At this time, Xionghui looked at the row of life-sustaining warehouses behind him and said, "We should go in first." The team leader thought for a moment and said, "Okay, let's go in now." Everyone chose a life-sustaining cabin and drilled into it. Xionghui also chose one. After entering, he closed the hatch and began to inject deep-sea liquid, which is the liquid that maintains the safety of personnel. Seeing the rapid influx of deep-sea liquid, which was about to submerge the whole person, Xionghui was also nervous, and the battleship was no longer bumping continuously. Wear goggles and a respirator. In this way, you won't have to worry about being unable to breathe or losing sight in deep-sea fluid. After all the deep-sea liquid was poured in, the world in his field of vision turned pink, because he was seeing the world in this liquid. Apart from the buzzing sound of electricity, there was no sound to be heard. At the same time, he couldn't speak. But then, he was shocked because he found that his neurons were actually connected to the computer host. A slight voice echoed in my mind, connecting to biological host. Detecting. New Gaia citizen Xionghui. Active mercenary. Rank corporal. Since it can be connected to the battleship host through the brain nerves. Then, stop beeping the HL, Xionghui scolded. Of course, he was not scolding with his mouth, because he was now soaked in deep-sea fluid and could not speak. Instead, he was scolding through his mind. He believed that the computer host you can hear him scolding it. "I'm just asking you." Xionghui cursed again. "Has anyone connected to you?" The AI replied. "No one except you." Chapter 887 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 12. On Galaxy 1, the flagship of the First Fleet, the electromagnetic signal of the host AI was converted into brain waves, which echoed in Xionghui's mind. "The flagship is only connected to one person's brain waves. And that's you, Corporal Xionghui. Give the order immediately," Xionghui said. Of course, the order was issued by brain waves. He was now soaked in deep-sea fluid and unable to speak. So to be precise, he should be thinking. And his brain waves have been connected to the battleship AI. "The commander's trustworthiness is being assessed. You are so cool that you are still taking the test. If we take the test again, we will be beaten by the enemy. Quickly give me an order to order all personnel on the ship to enter the life support cabin and the combatants to enter the combat life support cabin. Order all warships in the fleet to release all mechas. Engage in battle. and head to Area 35. Order the 2nd, 7th, 8th, 47th, 95th, and 107th fleets to all be teleported through the wormhole. Send them our precise location, and ask them to be careful when launching the wormhole to avoid a collision. The AI hesitated, and Xianghui cursed again. Are you so stupid? Hurry up and execute the order. The AI still didn't answer, and Xianghui cursed. Can it still be? Okay. Finally, the AI replied. I have accepted the authorization from Marshal Dai Lizi. Corporal Xianghui, I will fully implement your order. Please give it. Good guy. Dai Lizi, please carry out the instructions I just gave. Also, please call me Udot. Yes, Commander-in-Chief. Once the instructions are conveyed, everything is easy to handle. Brain waves are connected to AI. Although the nerve transmission speed is very slow compared to electromagnetic waves, it is much faster than the speed of speech. Inside the Galaxy No. 1 ship, people, whether soldiers or civilians, began to run to the nearest life support warehouse. A large number of mechas were released from various battleships, and according to unified tactical deployment, they circled with the invading enemies. Xionghui connected to the battleship AI through brain waves to issue instructions, and the various naval guns on the ship continued to shoot at the enemies in space. There are still enemies that are constantly launching wormholes through space disturbance points. Command the empty town console to adjust the control layout and initiate immediate mobile deployment measures. After adjusting the layout, the spatial disturbance will change, and the original points will disappear or move to other places. In this case, the enemy will not be able to enter by dropping wormholes. So once this instruction was conveyed and executed, the spatial disturbance points that originally exposed their positions disappeared very quickly, and no more enemy units joined. According to AI prediction, the enemy currently has about 3 billion units left in the system. Once the space is disturbed by movement, it is equivalent to cutting off the wormhole's release point, which is equivalent to cutting off the retreat route of these enemy units. In that case, it would be so big that we could continuously launch wormholes inside the enemy and launch them anywhere in the star system at will. Let them spread out without looking at each other, and destroy them at will. The next order Xionghui gave was to disperse the enemies to other defense zones in the star system. In this way, after the brother fleets he commanded at the beginning came over, and let the fleets in other defense zones destroy them. So at this time, you can see enemies constantly disappearing suddenly in space. Let's talk about the interior of the battleship. Issuing instructions layer by layer. All personnel enter the nearest life-sustaining warehouse. This process takes about 5 minutes to complete. Entering the life-sustaining warehouse is a bit like the ancient people on Earth entering the air raid shelter after being bombed. Entering the life-sustaining warehouse is not an escape, but a self-protection. It requires daily training, and the training requirement is to be completed within 5 minutes. So after the 5-minute life-sustaining warehouse command ends, there is the second command, which is to shut down all civil power systems, including artificial gravity systems, artificial lighting systems, temperature adjustment systems, water supply systems, civil energy supply systems, air conditioning systems, etc. If someone is too late to enter the life support cabin and these systems are turned off, there will be no casualties. Although the air supply system is turned off, there is still residual air in the cabin. Although the temperature control equipment is turned off, the cabin can still be kept warm for a long time. There will only be weightlessness and dim lighting. After these are all turned off, it is time for the commander, who controls the battleship's only brainwave connection, to show off his skills. However, it was said that after Xionghui issued these instructions, he used brainwaves to say to the AI, I am going to start taking over the system completely. No problem, Mr. Commander. I'm getting ready to roll. The huge body of the battleship rolled in space, which was a very difficult thing to move. But Xionghui did it, connected to the AI through brain waves, and issued instructions through brain waves, and saw this superstar-class battleship. Suddenly, he turned over in space, accelerated, and flew forward. There was a large number of enemy planes escaping in that direction. Galaxy No. 1 accelerated to the maximum, and at the same time extended its cannons from the hull, constantly designing towards the surrounding enemies. The so-called joint artillery is a bit like a mechanical arm with multiple gun barrels installed on it. The direction can be adjusted at will, and the enemy can be designed at will. Therefore, the Galaxy No. 1 battleship is the entry level of the Flying Bear super mecha. But at this moment, Galaxy 1 is at home in the battlefield, and enemy planes are constantly being crushed and destroyed by it. Enemy aircraft are constantly being dropped into other places in the system. And new Gaia units are constantly entering the battlefield, and then leaving the battlefield. Enemy units are being consumed quickly. In total, 15 minutes have passed. All enemy aircraft and ships have been destroyed. As long as they enter the empty town, no one can escape. In this battle, the enemy lost 3.5 billion units, while New Gaia lost 15 million units at any time. Although it is a very large number, it is a very small number compared to the enemy's 3.5 billion units. There were about 3,000 casualties, mostly caused by our units not opening their shields in time when the enemy launched a surprise attack in the early stages of the war. After the battle was over, someone was assigned to clean up the battlefield. Xiong Hui gave the last instruction. Open the life-sustaining cabin and let me out. Yes, Mr. Commander. All the deep-sea fluid was being removed. The brainwave connection was disconnected. The hatch of the life-sustaining cabin was also opened. And Xiong Hui walked out of the life-sustaining cabin. Other intelligence agents also came out one after another, cheering around Xiong Hui and praising his natural commanding ability. The door to the headquarters hall was opened, and Dai Lizi and other commanders came in. When she came to Xiong Hui, Dai Lizi looked unhappy. Xiong Hui seemed to have made a mistake and whispered, I'm sorry. I don't dare to make any arbitrary decisions. Chapter 888 Battle Spirit Mecha Master 13. Xiong Hui thought that his behavior this time would anger Dai Lizi. Unexpectedly, Dai Lizi quickly changed his attitude and asked him to return to his post and continue working. Then New Gaia's entire chain of command held an emergency meeting to discuss how to close such a loophole. The result of Xiong Hui's treatment was that he was good at making decisions, did not listen to orders, and solved the crisis in a timely manner. Therefore, the merits and demerits were balanced, and there was neither reward nor punishment. Some people felt sorry for him, especially Hu Kuei. Xiong Hui felt dissatisfied at first, but after thinking about it, he let it go and just continued to hang out. So he worked in the intelligence department of the headquarters as always. 3 days later, Dai Lizi summoned him, and his career began to change again. Dai Lizi met him alone. As soon as she saw him, she said straight to the point. New Gaia plans to restart the Flying Bear project, and plans to recruit you to participate. Are you interested? Are you talking about that big ship that has been stranded for more than 800 years? Xiong Hui asked. Dai Lizi nodded and said, Yes, we have been fighting Half-Life for 900 years, and we have never been able to win or lose. We have also been trapped in a dual galaxy, and our technology has been unable to achieve breakthroughs. The Flying Bear may be able to take us out of this predicament. Come here. Xiong Hui followed her and walked in the corridor of the headquarters. On the left was a huge floor-to-ceiling porthole. Dai Lizi led him to a unique angle, pointed at an aircraft in the sky, and said, Did you see it? That's it. The thing she was talking about was, of course, the Flying Bear. The Flying Bear is indeed very, very big. It is a superstar. In battleship mode, its length reaches 120 kilometers. Although the Flying Bear is huge, it is also a mecha, so it naturally has a battleship mode and a battle armor mode. Its battleship mode corresponds to the fighter mode of the small mecha, while the battle frame mode is the same, with the appearance of a robot. At this moment, the Flying Bear is in battleship mode, appearing in the shape of a battleship. The Superstar class is not the largest battleship in New Gaia. There are even larger Bright Giant class and Supergiant class. But even so, the Superstar class Flying Bear is already a behemoth. How big would it be if it transformed into a robot? Xiong Hui, who spoke little, couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Transform into a robot. That's the same length. Your Excellency, Grand Commander, I am willing to join the team that restarts Fei Xiong's plan. You don't want to ask what Fei Xiong's plan is? The largest mecha, Xiong Hui said, must be at least the War Master level. No, it should be higher than the War Master level. Dai Lizi sighed and said, But we don't even have a war commander now. And there are so many generals. Xiong Hui said, If nothing happens, I will become the first war commander. You are young, but your ambition is quite big. I am an ancestor. Old ancestor? Very good. Then work hard. I hope you can become the first war commander of my new Gaia. And, Xiong Hui said, pointing to the Flying Bear parked in space. I still want to drive it. No one has been able to drive it in 900 years. But someone drove it 900 years ago. 900 years ago. The first, and so far the only, person to drive a flying bear was Amphrey. Amphyri and Annie are both from the royal family of Liuzhou Star. Both of them have the consciousness control ability of the royal family of Liuzhou Star. So Amphyri can control the flying bear. The reason why Annie can't is because she is no longer a human being and has become a Zerg. So she has powerful soul wave detection capabilities, but no conscious control capabilities. This is also why after Amphyri died, there were no more flying bear pilots. Xiong Hui was transferred to work in the newly established Feixiong Planning Department. This is the third time Xiong Hui has been transferred since the last Halo War team was wiped out. The first time, he was assigned to Lucy to learn soul wave control from Lucy. And the second time, he was transferred to the Galaxy No. 1 headquarters, doing the work of an intelligence agent. And for the third time, this time, Xiong Hui was transferred to a new department. That is, the Flying Bear Project Research Department. As for the specific work, it was not said for the time being. And Xiong Hui did not ask. He only knew that in wherever you work, you serve New Gaia. Soon, the next day Xiong Hui took his luggage and headed to the Flying Bear. A stagnant super mecha. A small passenger spaceship carrying a dozen people left the Galaxy 1 and flew to the Flying Bear. Xiong Hui sat in his seat, looking over the shoulders of several people and looking out the front window at the approaching Flying Bear. The Flying Bear is huge, old, and has no shield. The shield is not turned on. The sudden incident that broke in through space disturbance in Half-Life, this time almost destroyed the Flying Bear. Fortunately, Xiong Hui reacted quickly and repelled the enemy. Now, what I see is that this big thing in the universe is completely dark inside. It has energy modules inside, but it will take some time to restore the lighting. You can only turn on the lighting with a backup power supply. Since this big thing has been abandoned for more than 800 years, almost all modules are in a paralyzed state. Especially the artificial gravity module. Needless to say about other places. Therefore, after the working group was stationed, they could only open the spacecraft to berth. All equipment were on the spacecraft. And all food and daily life were also taken care of on the spacecraft. Only after the giant mecha has recovered, or is partially recovered, can personnel be allowed in. The giant mecha Flying Bear is a superstar. 120 kilometers long. This number may be insignificant in space, but if it were to be placed on the ground, it would be a supergiant. In ancient times on Earth, the length of a super aircraft carrier was only about 300 meters. If calculated as 350 meters, it would be equivalent to 340 such super nuclear-powered aircraft carriers connected end to reach the length of the Flying Bear. Such a huge mecha is not as simple as just one pilot flying it. It can carry 15 billion units of attack drones under certain conditions. The so-called specific conditions require the Flying Bear to load some more modules. Without these additional modules, it can also carry 1.5 billion attack drones. How many drones can be carried by a mecha is not just a matter of carrying it. It also requires the pilot to be able to control these drones to participate in interstellar wars. Therefore, the Flying Bear requires at least 100 pilots alone. In addition, it also needs staff from various departments internally, including maintenance personnel, intelligence personnel, logistics personnel, command personnel, and other personnel. A Flying Bear mecha requires at least 10 military and staff members inside, and its load is 1 million people. Therefore, under normal conditions, the Flying Bear, which is returned to normal, will carry at least 30 staff and family members in total, 10,000 people, and 1.5 billion drones, or 15 billion drones when the modules are fully loaded. Chapter 889 Admiral Flying Bear 1. Xiong Hui has been working on the Flying Bear battleship, Giant Mecha, for 3 months. The work of these 3 months has basically been to inspect and repair the Flying Bear, and how to make it operate. There are hundreds of thousands of people involved in the Flying Bear project. So this big thing that is almost scrapped is very busy all day long. There are always passenger and cargo spacecraft shuttled back and forth, transporting materials and personnel. After 3 months of work, the energy module was finally activated and charged with energy. The artificial gravity module has also been restored to 70%, and artificial gravity has been activated in some paragraphs. So people can no longer work while floating. Some sections have achieved sealability, which means that they can be filled with air, and the air pressure and temperature can be adjusted. In short, some sections can be suitable for humans to survive without protective measures. On this day, Xiong Hui wore thick protective clothing and waited with everyone. Finally, with the operation of the machine, the Tibetan section was restarted. The temperature was adjusted, and artificial gravity was generated. Together with everyone. He also returned from the floating state to a stable state. Fell on the deck. The data showed everything was normal. People took off their helmets and cheered. Xionghui slowly took off his protective helmet and breathed in the fresh air that filled the passage. Suddenly a voice entered its mind. It was a very neutral voice. At first glance, it sounded like a man. But upon closer inspection, it sounded like a woman. The voice said, "I finally waited for you to come. Are you talking to me?" Xionghui asked. Looking around, people looked at him in confusion. Everyone around him looked at him curiously. Xionghui immediately understood that there was a person using brain waves to communicate with him. Who could this person be? "Yes, I'm talking to you." The voice continued to echo in his mind. Xionghui stood still and ignored others. The voice continued. "Hello, Xionghui. It's good that you can feel me. So who are you?" Xionghui asked. "You don't need to open your mouth to speak. You can communicate with me through brain waves." The voice in my head said. Xionghui nodded. The voice said. "Yes, you guessed it right. I am the AI of the Flying Bear. They turned on the power, and I came back to life. Hello. How should I call you?" Xionghui tried to ask using brainwaves. "I don't have a name. The first pilot Amphrey called me Buddy." "Dude?" "Yes." "Okay. Buddy. But I don't think Buddy is a name. Amphrey doesn't respect you. You should have a name. Then give me a name." "Why me?" "Because only you can communicate with me." "Idea?" "Yes. That means your brain waves are connected to my electromagnetic waves. Can't others do it?" Xionghui asked. "As far as I know, there are many Soul Masters in New Gaia." "Soul Master?" "None of them can. Only you can." Okay. Only I can do it. In this way, I have a superpower. So can it be said that I can communicate with you through brain waves? Which is what you call thoughts. Which means I can fly the Flying Bear. Yes, that's the case. But it's not possible now. We have to wait until the Flying Bear recovers completely. That's natural. Just as Xionghui said this, there was a sudden popping sound. The passage was dark. The lighting was extinguished. The gravity was reduced. And then, there was weightlessness. The body began to float. And the AI of the Flying Bear also went offline. "What's going on?" Xionghui asked the people around him loudly. One person replied, "The equipment is faulty. It should be repaired soon." "It's okay." Sure enough, after about 5 minutes, the equipment recovered, and the lighting and gravity were restored. With a buzzing sound, a voice echoed in my mind. "I finally waited for you to come." Xionghui was taken aback and said in his mind, "I'll go. What's your situation? Didn't you say this again just now? Why did you say it again?" "I didn't say that." AI refused to admit. "Okay. I understand," Xionghui said. "The power was cut off just now, and your memory did not retain the memory just now." After that, he looked around and shouted, "Don't cut off the power again. The computer room cannot be cut off. It will destroy the computing module." As soon as he finished speaking, Dai Lizi connected in, and her voice rang in his headset. "Why did you say that? Are you connected to Fei Xiong's host AI?" "Yes," Xionghui said while pressing the headset. "It took the initiative to find me. If the power is cut off frequently, its chip will be burned and important data will be lost." "Well, I understand. I will ask the technical team to turn on its battery pack now to ensure that it will never be powered off." "Yes, sir." "So, sir, what do I need to do?" "Communicate with it. Take over it. And make it work for you." "Why is this done?" "You should understand," Deli said and disconnected. Strange. Xionghui thought to himself. Why is this old woman so mysterious? However, since this old woman can safely let him take over the Flying Bear, then, Xionghui thought to himself, can I just let go and have a big fight? Thinking of this, he continued to speak through brain waves and the Flying Bear AI. "From now on, your name is Wait. Are you a boy or a girl?" The voice of this AI is relatively neutral, and it is impossible to distinguish between male and female. But since it is AI, it means it is a machine. How can a machine be divided into men and women? But I heard the AI reply, "I am a machine and have no gender." "Then how did you get here in the first place?" Xionghui asked again. He had to ask carefully before he could be sure to name it. If it is a boy, give it a boy's name, and vice versa. It cannot be neither male nor female. AI said, The original initiative to build the flying bear was Reb Ring, and he was a man. According to his request, the engineer designed me to be a woman. The only person who could control the flying bear at that time was Inferi. Inferi was a woman. She didn't like my identity as a woman. But she didn't ask me to change to a male setting. She just asked me to speak less softly. So my voice is set to be neutral. Neither male nor female. And I never had a name. Inferi called me Buddy. Okay. I understand, Xionghui said. So, do you prefer yourself to be a boy or a girl? Of course it's a female, the AI said. Because I was set as a female from the beginning. In that case, you are a woman. The woman in the machine. How about I give you a name? Sister Xiong? Sister Xiong? AI said. That doesn't sound good. Hey, you robot has learned to be picky. You are mine now. So your last name is Xiong. Then I'm older than you, AI said. I was designed in 1995. And you were born in 2000. I'm 5 years older than you. Then I'll call you Sister Xiong. Is that okay? Chapter 890 Admiral Flying Bear 2. Xionghui himself didn't expect that he could still be connected to the AI of the flying bear. And it was connected to the brain waves. But the AI said it was a thought. This also allowed him to understand the mental abilities of the Liuzhou Star royal family. The flying bear was built in 1995. And Xionghui was born in 2000. So the flying bear is 5 years older than Xionghui. Naturally. Its AI is also 5 years older than him. It is the year 2920. If calculated, Xionghui is already 920 years old. And AI is also 925 years old. However, during this period, Xionghui hibernated for a full 900 years. So his biological age was only 20 years old. Although the flying bear AI has been shut down for many years during these more than 900 years. In general, its operating time is definitely more than 20 years. If the startup time of the machine is equivalent to human physiological age, then the flying bear AI is older than Xionghui. So the love sister complex will be reflected here again. The AI itself is the AI of the flying bear, and naturally becomes his sister bear. Then Sister Xiong, the supreme commander of the headquarters, Ms. Dai Lizi, has authorized you to take orders from me. Well, I have received this authorization. Chief, very good, Xionghui said. He originally wanted Sister Xiong to call him younger brother. But on second thought, he decided against it. After all, the individual AI's sister Ren had already called him younger brother. So he could no longer be the younger brother of another AI. I hope you can return to your best fighting condition as soon as possible. I look forward to the day when I can fight with you. Don't worry, Chief, Sister Xiong said. That day will come soon. The communication between Xionghui and Sister Xiong was all done through brain waves. And no one else knew what he was doing standing there. After the exchange was almost complete, Xionghui became active and got busy with everyone. In this way, while working, I can continue to communicate with Fei Xiong AI's Sister Xiong. But he didn't know that because of him, the top management of New Gaia had a big dispute. Because some people thought that Xionghui Bing was reliable. First of all, he was not from this world at all. He is a person who woke up from hibernation 900 years ago. So New Gaia cannot be handed over to him. If you master the flying bear, you can control the fate of New Gaia. This is the consensus that people in New Gaia have reached for many years. So some people are worried about him. But Dai Lizi is very supportive of him. Her point of view is that only by operating the flying bear will New Gaia be able to turn the tide of the war. Only then will the half-life be eliminated, and New Gaia be able to survive. Future. Although Xionghui is connected to the AI of the flying bear, he still cannot fully control the flying bear. The top management of New Gaia has always been unresolved about this matter. Xionghui first went on the flying bear, working. In the blink of an eye, 8 years have passed, and Xionghui is now 20 years old. The maintenance progress of the flying bear is also halfway done, and it will be ready for actual combat in another year. Regarding the restart of the flying bear, it caused a strong response on the entire New Gaia network. On the one hand, people expected the entire flying bear to quickly join the battle. But on the other hand, they also had a great reaction to Xionghui. This announcement included both approval and doubt. Because after all, he is only 20 years old, which is very young in any era. No one would believe that such a young person handed him a super mecha that can reach 1.5 billion combat units. In the summer of 2920, Xionghui took a week's leave, returned to the insect swarm, and met Annie. Annie was very happy for Xionghui's return. While eating, Xionghui raised a question. Mom, Xionghui said, it is recorded in history that you and Enfari had another big battle back then. That's right, Anne said. New Gaia was almost destroyed in the hands of Amphrey. Both you and Enfari have telekinesis? Yes, Annie said. But I don't have it now. I am now. Well, you know, I am not a human being. The telepathy power of the 6 continents royal family can only be possessed by humans. I lost this ability when I became a Zerg. Are all the rest of the royal family gone? It's amazing to say. Anne said, after arriving from Star B to Star A. Except for Amphrey and I. Everyone else in the royal family, who originally had this ability, miraculously disappeared. So now, 900 years have passed. No one in New Gaia has this ability, and it has gradually been lost. But what surprises me is that you can actually do it. You are not from the 6 continents. The New Gaians include 2 races, the Earth people and the 6 continent Star people. During the 900 years of long-term evolutionary integration, the Earth people and the 6 continent Star people have long been indistinguishable. There is only a single New Gaia people, not to mention the 6 continent Star royal family, which had been integrated in the 900 years of development. So this is also one of the main reasons for the loss of the 6 continent Star royal family's telepathy. Xionghui said. So, the so-called soul wave of human beings is not a soul wave at all. But telepathy? Annie asked. Xionghui nodded. Well, yes. But it may not be the same as the telepathy you once had. Although it is different. As long as it is strong enough. You can connect with Sister Xiong. Sister Xiong? Oh. The AI of the Flying Bear can control the Flying Bear as it pleases. The Flying Bear has 1.5 billion units. And with expansion modules, it can reach up to 15 billion units. Can one person control it? Xionghui shook his head and said, of course one person can't do it. Many people are needed. But the main engine only needs one. And it is the soul of the entire Flying Bear. It is very important. I heard from Dialyse that you have met this condition. Xionghui nodded and said, thanks to my mother for providing me with pupation purification. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to reach this level. But it's not perfect now. You mean it still needs purification? Xionghui nodded. Annie said, if you evolve again, you will be at the Azure Dragon level, which will take 3 months. After that, you will rest for another 3 months. And then you will be at the Xuanwu level, which will take a year. Xionghui shook his head and said, maybe we can simplify it. Simplify? How to simplify? Annie asked. So that's why I asked you if you have telekinesis. But I used to know how to do it. But now I can't. So do you still remember what you were thinking at that time? Mind method? Annie smiled. Do you think it's about cultivating Taoism? Give back the mental method. Xionghui was stunned for a moment, thinking about how to express what he wanted to express, and looked at him in a daze and asked, what's wrong? Xionghui thought for a while and said, for example, you can still use telekinesis. So how do you use it? Chapter 891 Admiral Flying Bear 3. Xionghui thought for a while and said, for example, you can still use telekinesis. So how do you use it? But I can't use it, said Anne. I don't want you to use it, Xionghui said. I want you to know what the process of using telekinesis looks like. Actually, after so many years, I can't remember how I used telekinesis in the first place. But let me think about it. As Annie spoke, she began to recall her experience in using telekinesis, and then began to display her moves, and met Yubin for the first time on the New Gaia Green Star. At that time, the Green Star Zerg had not yet been conquered by her. When they were escaping from the Green Star, Annie used her telekinesis to stop the Zerg attack. Later, in space, the spacecraft crashed into the battleship Dream Chaser. She also used her telekinesis to prevent the crash, and saved a whole ship of people. The so-called move is to dance the arms casually. After dancing a few times, Annie said, well, I have the idea. No, to be precise, it is the experience. But even if you have experience, you can't teach it to others. Just teach it to me and that's it. Teach it to you? How to teach it? And said, if it can be taught, will this ability be lost? But I'm special. I have telekinesis. But it's just not comprehensive yet. Then I can't teach it to you. Isn't there a chrysalis for purification? You mean, inject the spores into the chrysalis you purified? Is this possible? Xionghui asked, and shook her head and said, I'm not sure. Then what should we do? Xionghui said, walking back and forth, thinking of a way. Now he especially wants to control the flying bear. In that case, he can. Annie was also thinking that she was willing to do her best for Xiong Hui, her godson. And finally, or else, said Anne, I will purge with you. You want to purify with me? Xiong Hui asked doubtfully. Anyway, I have 3 days every month that I need to purify. And this month it's exactly the purification time. The Blood Blade Queen belongs to the White Tiger class. The purification cycle of a White Tiger class unit is 1 month, and the purification time is 3 days. Then you and I are. What Xiong Hui wanted to ask was whether he wanted her to share a cocoon, or to separate and have a separate cocoon. But it was difficult to ask directly. Although he called her mother, she was not her biological mother after all, so there was still a bit of a barrier. And although this Anne is over 900 years old, and her biological age is also over 900 years old, or experience. 3 days later, the purification was completed and the two emerged from the pupa. Annie was a Zerg herself, so she quickly removed the sticky substance from her body and put on clean clothes, while Xiong Hui had to take a shower to rinse off the Zerg substance. After everything was cleared, the two met again, and Annie asked, How is it? Have you realized it? Xiong Hui nodded and said, Sure enough, I figured it out. I think I can fully control the flying bear. Just a moment. After saying that, she pointed her index finger to her temple, closed her eyes and meditated, and looked at him in confusion, not knowing what he was going to do. It took more than a minute before Xiong Hui opened his eyes and said, I just reported it to the headquarters. Just now. How did you do it? Annie asked. Xiong Hui said, I used my mind to connect with Sister Xiong, and then Sister Xiong changed my thinking feedback to the headquarters. Mom, I may have to end my vacation early. Can't you stay until the end of the holiday? I'm sorry. Mom, Xiong Hui said and kissed Annie on the forehead. New Gaia has been dormant for so many years. It's time to fight back. We need to advance the process. So I need to get back to work quickly. And sighed and said, There is no way. I know that you care about work and New Gaia. Since ancient times, loyalty and filial piety have always been incompatible. You can go, but can you rest for 1 night and go back tomorrow? Xiong Hui refused to reject Annie, so he agreed. So he stayed on the biological battleship for another night. During the night break, Hukui came in and said happily, Brother Hui, I might want to be with you. Xiong Hui's heart sank. Due to work reasons, the two finally separated, and now they have to be together. How can he not be anxious? He doesn't love Hukui, and he doesn't know how to reject her. So it is a very troublesome truth. I can only deal with it perfunctorily. Hukui said, The flying bear is about to be completed. I signed up for its information group, and it is very likely to be successful. Xiong Hui could only give her a few perfunctory words. We soon returned to the flying bear. After another 3 days, the neuron command of the flying bear was basically completed and needed to be tested. The test naturally needs Xiong Hui to conduct it. In the central command module of the flying bear, there is a very large cabin. It is an approximately spherical cabin with a diameter of nearly 10 meters. There are 6 entrances on its inner wall. Each entrance is in a different direction. At this moment, the 6 entrances to this spherical cabin are closed. Before starting the test, Xiong Hui came to the entrance of Ian, and several staff members accompanied him. Everything is ready, and the entrance hatch is opened. After opening it, I saw only the scene inside. Although Xiong Hui was mentally prepared, he was still surprised. Chapter 892 Admiral Flying Bear 4. The reason why I was shocked was because this huge polyhedral, approximately spherical cabin was filled with a liquid. And this liquid was obviously higher than the entrance door. But it would not flow out. Xiong Hui knows that this is because this cabin has its own independent artificial gravity system. The center of gravity is at the center of the cabin. So the liquid in this cabin will be attracted to the middle of the cabin without leaking out. This liquid that fills the cabin is the famous deep-sea liquid. The main function of deep-sea fluid is to prevent ship members from being injured when the aircraft accelerates at high speeds. Facing the deep-sea liquid in front of him, Xiong Hui was helpless for a moment, and the others accompanying him were all waiting for him. Sister Xiong's voice came in my mind. You can put on the mask. Oh, yes, Xiong Hui said, taking the special diving suit from the staff and putting it on. A discreet wetsuit, with an oxygen tank and mask, kept him from drowning and allowed him to see out of the water. After putting it on, standing in front of the liquid, Xiong Hui reached out to touch it and could really feel the suspended liquid. He looked back at everyone and walked in. After entering the deep-sea liquid, it began to swim in the liquid, and the hatch was closed. Communicate with Sister Xiong and ask all personnel in the Flying Bear to enter the nearest life-sustaining warehouse. The test will begin in 10 minutes. Immediately, alarms blared throughout the Flying Bear Super Mecha battleship, and everyone got busy and ran towards the nearest life support warehouse. Xiong Hui was in the deep-sea cabin and could not hear the outside sounds. He could only tell him through Sister Xiong, who displayed the information inside and outside the battleship in the deep-sea liquid in the form of images of digital characters. Therefore, in the deep-sea cabin, you can see that the liquid inside displays various characters and images everywhere. In other words, the deep-sea liquid in the cabin is a huge dome, and the observer is inside the dome. Among this cabin filled with deep-sea fluid is called the deep-sea cabin. It is Xiong Hui's dedicated smart cabin. In it, he can intelligently control the entire giant mecha to transform, fly, fight, and perform various related actions. Xiong Hui swam in the deep-sea liquid and reached the middle position. There was no gravity here, so there was no distinction between up and down. Looking around, I can actually easily switch between the scene inside the battleship outside the deep-sea cabin and the scene outside the battleship in space. He switches at will and can easily observe the landscape and detailed dynamics in space. Dai Lizi came in through the line. Her words were converted into brain waves through AI and presented in Xiong Hui's mind, so he could hear her words. When other people who are uncomfortable and very important speak and must be connected, they will be converted into text by AI and displayed line by line in the deep-sea liquid, which can be seen as long as you raise your eyes. The time is also marked after each sentence to let Xiong Hui know when each sentence was said. If the words are too long or are fixed by the following words, they will slowly disappear, but they will be recorded in the memory bank. But at this moment, Dai Lizi's words echoed in his mind, asking, "How is it? Can you adapt?" Xiong Hui replied, "Don't worry. It's completely fine." He speaks using brain waves, which are then received by the AI and converted into electromagnetic waves, which are transmitted to Dai Lizi and then converted into sounds. Dai Lizi can hear him speak. Xiong Hui said again, "I'm going to start taking action." Dai Lizi said, "In the experimental stage, don't move too much to prevent accidents." "Understood," Xiong Hui said, and asked Sister Xiong to type the warning that was about to begin and display it on everyone's life-sustaining warehouse screen, so that everyone could be prepared. When everything was ready, Xiong Hui made movements in the deep-sea cabin, and then issued instructions in conjunction with brain waves and AI's Sister Xiong. Under his command, the Flying Bear began to move. More than half of the people of New Gaia are watching this experiment. The huge body of the Flying Bear turned several times on the spot, and in various directions. During the rotation, Xiong Hui asked the AI to monitor the status of the people inside to see if they could adapt to this flip. Because the Flying Bear is too huge, when it performs difficult movements, there are places far away from the axis. The further away, the faster it will go. For example, if the center store in the Flying Bear battleship mode is used as the axis to rotate, then the bow and stern of the battleship will move at the maximum speed, and people staying at the bow and stern will face extremely high acceleration. It is difficult for people with poor physical fitness to adapt to such fast movements. Therefore, many people are only suitable for working on battleships, but are not suitable for operating mechas or working on giant mechas. In order to allow the Flying Bear to obtain the most superior maneuverability, all life support systems related to the crew, such as gravity, air, pressure and temperature, were shut down. Therefore, all personnel must stay in the life-sustaining warehouse, and some staff still need to work in the life-sustaining warehouse. However, the life-sustaining warehouse is filled with deep-sea liquid, so it is impossible to speak, except for Xiong Hui. No one can recall the power of memory, so they cannot connect with the AI through brain waves. They can only communicate through typing, and in some commands, and there are also corresponding operating units in the staff's life support warehouse. But it was said that after the Flying Bear made several circles in space in battleship mode, it suddenly accelerated and flew in one direction. While flying, a large number of drones were released. The scene was like poking a hornet's nest. The central part covers the sky and the sun. After these drones flew out, they flew around in a swarm, seemingly in disarray, and irradiated them with low-energy lasers. But the onlookers could see that the computer showed that none of the lasers fired everywhere found themselves, or friendly units. This is just a low-energy laser with no destructive power, and it is equivalent to an exercise. After taking random photos, this large group of flying objects began to organize themselves into an orderly manner, and began to rotate around the flying bear in a spiral shape. Just after spinning for a while, he suddenly pulled away again and saw that in space, the flying bear in battleship mode suddenly began to deform, and soon turned into a robot shape. The transformation process took about 5 minutes, although it lasted for 5 minutes. These 5 minutes were considered very fast for such a huge guy. And during the process of transformation, the flying bear's multiple muzzles fired low-energy beams in all directions. This is equivalent to being on the battlefield. Even in the middle of a war, it will not delay its transformation. It can be on the battlefield while the battle is in progress. Feel free to switch between armor and robot modes at will. As a giant mecha, the flying bear, like all other mechas, has only 2 forms. That is, battleship, machine, mode and robot mode. The so-called transformation is just switching between these 2 modes to change its appearance. Chapter 893 Admiral Flying Bear 5. The preliminary test was very successful. It passed many tests such as flight, deformation, rolling, and simulated combat. After the test was completed, Xionghui piloted the flying bear, transformed into a battleship mode, returned to the defense zone of the first ship, and parked at an unwilling place away from the Galaxy 1. All the life support systems inside the battleship were restored. Xionghui also walked out of the deep-sea cabin and took off his diving suit. Those who came out of the nearby life support cabin first came to congratulate him. Xionghui looked at the people gathered around and asked, "How is it? How are you adapting?" One of them said, "The acceleration was too fast, and the rolling motion was too big." Some people said that they vomited directly during the rolling process. Xionghui put his hands on his hips and said, "This speed is still fast. I asked Sister Xiong to monitor you all the time. I am afraid that some of you will not adapt, so I don't dare to move too much. If there is a war, the speed may be much faster than this. You must know that my telekinesis power is faster than the speed of light." Think about it. I am already traveling faster than the speed of light, so the speed of battleships and drones must also keep up. Psychokinesis is similar to soul waves. They are both a type of tachyons, so they can reach faster than light speeds. However, warships and drones are entities and cannot reach the speed of light, let alone superlight speeds. Currently, the fastest speed of New Gaia is only 5x, which is 0.05 times the speed of light. Even so, this speed is already very fast in the universe. Some people still doubt Xionghui's ability and sneer at what he said. Xionghui did not argue and started walking towards his residence. The residence is not far from the deep-sea cabin, just a few steps away. When we returned to the door of the residence, the captain came over and said, "Little bear, your performance is not bad today. Work hard. You have a bright future." Xionghui just smiled and entered his living cabin without comment. Since he is the #1 pilot of the Flying Bear and the soul of the entire Super Mecha, New Gaia has equipped him with a single living cabin with 1 room and 1 living room on the battleship. I returned to the living cabin and took a shower. After I came out, I connected with Annie in the living room. As soon as it came online, Annie said, "Congratulations. You succeeded." Xionghui said, "Mom, no, more than half of this is due to you. Without your purification chrysalis, without your experience of telepathy, I would not be able to control the flying bear. Do you have any ideas?" "Imagine," Xionghui said. "I would like to, but it won't work." "Oh, do you have any ideas? I am just a corporal now, and I am asked to control a super mecha with 1.5 billion units, which may reach 15 billion units in the future. I need to be able to mobilize in many aspects. But what can I do as a corporal?" "That's true." And thought, "This is really a troublesome thing," Xionghui said. "But through these days of exploration, I have summed up some experience, so I have a little bit of my own ideas, which may or may not work. Can you tell me about it? If I want to truly control the flying bear," Xionghui said, "then I have to become an officer." "Wait a minute. It seems that Dai Lizi wants to connect to me. Then you talk to her." The two disconnected, and Xionghui brought Dai Lizi in. As soon as she went online, Dai Lizi said, "Xionghui, it's really good. After more than 900 years, someone finally opened the flying bear." "Dear Commander-in-Chief," Xionghui said, "if I want to perfectly control the flying bear, I think I have to come up with some ideas of my own. Oh, tell me, Xionghui said. First, my military rank must be improved. You can't let a corporal pilot a 1.5 billion unit super mecha. Right. Well, you don't need to tell me this. Our military team has been considering this issue for a long time, Dialisi said. The treatment I've given you before has actually been to train you. Don't you have a grudge? No. I can see that. So, Commander-in-Chief, what kind of military rank do you plan to give me? Xionghui, are you looking for my military rank? Dialisi asked. Xionghui could tell that this old woman was a little unhappy. But he didn't care. If he wanted Fei Xiong to drive, he would have to meet his requirements. Otherwise he would have an interview. So Xionghui said, if you want to say that, it can be said that you can leave Fei Xiong to me, and then a complete set of facilities will be available. Isn't it already? This facility also includes personnel, Xionghui said. So, everyone on the Flying Bear must obey my orders. Don't you think your request is a bit excessive? I don't think it's too much. And I think it's very reasonable, Xionghui said. The Flying Bear, a super mecha, will also be equipped with a large number of warrior-level mechas for assistance. If possible, we will also train with a large number of War Master-level pilots coming out. The Flying Bear will obviously become a strengthened fleet. I will naturally become the commander of this fleet. Xionghui, you are only 20 years old. How can you be qualified to be the fleet commander? Whether you are qualified or not depends not on qualifications, but on ability. I have this ability. What if the commander-in-chief cannot meet my conditions? I think it will be difficult for me to be qualified to serve as the #1 pilot of the Flying Bear. Are you blackmailing me? I'm not blackmailing you, dear Commander-in-Chief. I'm telling you a fact. Because I want the Flying Bear to perform at its best. Only in this way can I possibly do it. Dialisi fell into silence. Xionghui added, you don't have to answer me in a hurry. I have another idea, which is to immediately establish a Flying Bear University to quickly cultivate talent suitable for working on the Flying Bear. This experiment has shown that many people are not suitable to work on the Flying Bear. My speed today is already slow enough, and many people cannot adapt to it. If the work is at full capacity, there will definitely be many people it wasn't. Okay. At that time, and that would have greatly affected the progress of the war situation. This is possible, Dialisi said. We have also been considering whether to train some special talents on the Flying Bear. There is another thing that is also very important, Xionghui said. Deep-sea fluids need to be improved. The deep-sea liquid needs to be improved? Dialisi looked a little surprised. This is the formula of the Holy Light Civilization. It has been used for more than 900 years. You say it needs to be improved? Yes, Xionghui said. What I need is full immersion in deep-sea fluid, which will achieve higher efficiency. What? You want full immersion in deep-sea fluid? Xionghui nodded. Chapter 894 Admiral Flying Bear 6. When flying at high speed in the universe, there is no problem in itself. But there is a process in between when accelerating from slow speed to high speed. If the process is too fast, it will be super high acceleration. If the acceleration is too great, humans will be unable to bear it. In the most serious case, the body will be crushed into pulp by this acceleration. So ultra-high acceleration is also a very scary thing. In order to cope with the damage caused by this acceleration, humans have developed a kind of liquid, deep-sea liquid. Deep-sea liquid is not water or liquid in the deep sea. It is just a buffer to cope with acceleration. It can slow down or even reduce the damage caused by acceleration to the human body to a large extent. It was under this circumstance that deep-sea fluids came into being. There are two types of deep-sea fluids, immersion type and full immersion type. The immersion type is currently commonly used in New Gaia, which means that all personnel are immersed in deep-sea liquid. But their eyes are protected and their breathing is connected to a ventilator. Another kind is the full immersion type. The so-called total immersion means that not only the personnel are completely immersed in the liquid, but also there is no goggles or breathing equipment. The deep-sea liquid will be inhaled into the body, including the lungs, allowing the personnel to breathe directly in the liquid. It seems impossible, but full immersion in deep-sea fluid has been theoretically possible. But it lacks experimentality. People cannot breathe in water, so people only dare to think about this kind of deep-sea liquid. But they don't dare to try it. But now Xionghui actually proposed a fully immersed deep-sea liquid. Dialisi frowned and said, but no one in my New Gaia has tried full immersion in deep-sea liquid. Then let's try it, Xionghui said. The fully immersed deep-sea fluid has its advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage is that it is very uncomfortable for the pilot to use it. But I think you can feel it even if I don't mention the advantages. And how? If full immersion deep sea liquid becomes popular, I think it is not impossible for War Master level mechas to become popular. How is this possible? Dialeezy said. In the entire New Gaia, 900 years since the founding of civilization, there have only been 2 war commanders. One is Anfiri, who has been dead for 900 years. And one is you. Over the years, many people have tried to reach the War Master level, but they have all failed. But it's different now, Xionghui said. With my experience and the Zerg's chrysalis purification, it won't be a problem to train a War Master. Think about it. I'm driving a super mecha, and I bring hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of War Master level mechas with me. How spectacular will that scene be? Let's imagine that if all the current generals are upgraded to the War Master level, then the combat effectiveness of my new Gaia will be increased tenfold. Dialeezy thought for a while and said, Are you sure you can train a War Master level pilot? I can't guarantee it, but I can say it's definitely possible. Okay, Xionghui, Dialeezy said. As long as you have confidence, I will let you try. If you can train a War Master, that will be the greatest contribution to my new Gaia. It's not too late to thank you. One more thing, Xionghui said. I want to go to Battleship University. Commander-in-Chief, don't you think many people will be dissatisfied if a high school student is allowed to pilot such a huge guy? But you are the only one who can control the Flying Bear. How will you continue your research after you go to university? It doesn't matter. Doesn't Battleship University have an online university? I can go to an online university without delaying my work on the Flying Bear. Okay, I will find a way to satisfy your requirements. As soon as the connection with Dialeezy was disconnected, Hukuei called in and excitedly told him that in 2 days, she would come to work on the Flying Bear. Xionghui couldn't be happy and could only deal with it with a few words. Sure enough, 3 days later, Hukuei came to the Flying Bear. He hadn't seen him for several months, and he turned out to be a second lieutenant. Hey, how are you? You haven't seen me for a few months. Do you miss me? Hukuei asked with a smile. In the cabin not far from the deep-sea cabin, people were walking back and forth. Hukuei also held her hands. Xionghui broke away from her hand, and Hukuei asked in surprise, What's wrong? Xionghui took 2 steps back, saluted an extremely standard military salute, and said, Hello, Chief. Hukuei slapped him and said angrily, What are you doing? So serious? Xionghui said, Hello, Chief, again without letting go of his saluting hand. Hukuei had no choice but to say, Please take a moment. Only then did Xionghui put down his hand. Xionghui is a corporal, and Hukuei is a second lieutenant. One is a soldier, and the other is an officer. No wonder Xionghui wants to give him a military salute. Hukuei asked again, What are you doing? Do you not welcome my arrival? No, Xionghui said. He always wanted to reject her, but he really didn't know how to reject her. I've come to work at the Flying Bear, Hukuei said. I heard someone said that you might be promoted to the position, and then I will be your soldier from now on. Those are all rumors, Xionghui said. Many people don't like me and don't accept me. Why don't you mention me? Let's forget it. You are already an officer. If you work harder in the future, there will be room for development. Don't be discouraged. You have a chance, and the chance is greater than any of us. Xionghui took her to visit the headquarters and met the captain. The captain sent someone to arrange a job for her and asked her to do intelligence. But Hukuei was unwilling. She wanted to be a gunner. Although the Flying Bear is a super mecha, it has many gun positions designed on it. In this way, it can better attack the enemy. The captain disagreed. There were no officers to serve as gunners, so he was assigned to the command post. According to Xionghui's request, Dialeezy allowed him to attend the online university of Battleship University, where he would attend classes and work at the same time, striving to obtain an academic certificate in 4 years. Xionghui has been cooperating with various tests. Basically, he puts on a diving suit, enters the deep-sea chamber, and then controls the Flying Bear, performs various maneuvers, and simulates combat. Because the Flying Bear mecha is too huge, and the circulation system can only be turned on in battleship mode. It usually exists in battleship mode. The so-called circulation system includes artificial gravity, air, temperature, water, electricity, and other life support systems adapted to people. Because there are too many staff on the Flying Bear. Circulation systems are needed. And these systems can only be turned on in battleship mode. In robot mode, many systems cannot be opened. Or they are easy to use even if they are opened. The key is that in robot mode, it is basically war mode. However, he said that Xiong Hui's suggestions for Dai Lizi were finally concluded after consultations with New Gaia's top management. Chapter 895 Admiral Flying Bear 7. Xiong Hui mainly made 3 suggestions. One is to study at an online university while serving in the army. This has been agreed and has begun to be implemented. The second point is to improve the deep-sea liquid and change all or part of the current immersion type to full immersion type. This has also been approved, and attempts are being made to modify the formula and related equipment. Changing the deep-sea liquid is not just as simple as the formula, but also involves related equipment and other issues. The third issue is the military rank issue. The military group is divided into 2 groups. Some think that Xiong Hui should get the military rank he deserves, while others think that he is too young and not worthy of being awarded a high-level military rank. Finally, it was decided to organize a hearing to let Xiong Hui answer questions, listen to his thoughts, and synthesize opinions from all sides. At the hearing, there were indeed big bosses from all sides, and Xiong Hui answered all kinds of tricky questions. In the end, he couldn't listen anymore. So he concluded, If you can find a second person in New Gaia who can control the Flying Bear, I will give way immediately. Don't interrupt me. Let me continue. Someone is making excuses about my years ago. Yes, my biological age is only 20 years old. This is true, but my physical age is 920 years old. Let me ask, who among you is older than me? Of course, except me, Queen Anne, and was also invited to the hearing. Although he was the queen of the Zerg, he had been living in New Gaia and was besieged by Half-Life. She couldn't leave New Gaia even if she wanted to, so she was considered a New Gaia, and looked at her godson with a smile, waiting for him to finish. Xiong Hui said, I don't think you want to be trapped in Kepler-47 forever. Right? The universe is so big. We should get out. And the best hope for getting out now is the Flying Bear. And I can drive the Flying Bear. What questions do you have? If you don't give me a military rank, I really can't lead such a big guy and the hundreds of thousands of people in such a big guy. Of course, since I can take office, I will be qualified. I have told the Commander-in-Chief my vision for the future before, and I believe she has also conveyed it to you. You should also know what I mean. I will make the Flying Bear. No, the Flying Bear fleet. Become the New Gaia. And even a great fleet in the universe. A big statement. Annie also supported him and said, I think Xiong Hui is okay. I guarantee it with my personality. If New Gaia wants to grow stronger, it has to carry out reforms. After 900 years of war, the resources we have are also being consumed rapidly. Although it is predicted that it can still be used for 10,000 years. Our descendants cannot be imprisoned here for 10,000 years. After some discussion, some questioning, and some debate, someone finally asked, So what kind of military rank do you want? Xiong Hui said, Ordinary battleship captains are at least major generals. Although I am a mecha and have fewer members than the people on a fixed battleship, I have more combat units. In addition, I will build auxiliary mechas later and lead a large number of people. It's a War Master level mecha. So the military rank I hope for should be at least an admiral. There was a bang. When he is only 20 years old, he is required to wear the rank of general. How can he not cause a stir? Even Anne, who had always protected him, fell silent, not knowing how to speak for him. Xiong Hui sat across from everyone, holding his hands, waiting for their argument. Finally, Dai Lizi raised her voice, signaled everyone to be quiet, and said, I think this is no problem. If he has this ability, why not let him go? There have been many young generals throughout the ages. As long as I can make New Gaia grow stronger, get out of the Yin Wang twin galaxies, and eliminate the Half-Life, not to mention a general, even a Commander-in-Chief. If you ask me to give up, I will give up. Xiong Hui said, Your Excellency, I don't want your Commander-in-Chief. I just want to lead the Flying Bear well. I just want to be the Admiral of the Flying Bear. Dai Lizi nodded and asked everyone, Then if Xiong Hui can defeat Half-Life, do you think what I just said is right? Someone responded, If Xiong Hui can really defeat Half-Life, of course he can do anything. The key is that he has not made any achievements yet. So we are conferring him an admiral. We are worried that many people will not accept it. You have to know that our new Gaia has a population of 67 billion. Even if we old guys agree. What about the other 67 billion new Gaia people? Everyone agreed. And Xiong Hui also felt that what this person said made sense. Dai Lizi thought for a while and said, otherwise, Xiong Hui, we will first grant you the honorary rank of Admiral, commanding the entire Flying Bear. But the actual military rank is Warrant Officer. The entire Flying Bear battleship and the personnel on its related equipment must obey your command. After the Flying Bear is established and the Flying Bear fleet is complete, you will promote them step by step. And during the construction process of the Flying Bear, if there is a war, and considering that the Flying Bear can go into battle, you will gain a lot of achievements and confirm that you are indeed qualified for the rank of Fleet Commander and Admiral. At that time, if I appoint you again, I think not only us, but also the 67 billion soldiers and civilians of New Gaia will have no objection. Xiong Hui was about to speak, and Annie said, I also think what Dai Lizi said makes sense. Xiong Hui, don't be impatient. Heroes, no matter their age or status, have to gain a record. How about you accumulate some records first? What do you say? Xiong Hui sighed and said, that's okay. Honorary General will be Honorary General. Since he can be promoted to a substantive second lieutenant, it means that he will continue on the road of being an officer in the future, and his salary income will be more and more. So his hibernation plan will become more and more realistic. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but feel happy. In essence, he is a second lieutenant, honorary admiral, and acting captain. The original captain is also the acting captain. If he is appointed as the deputy captain, he must also obey his orders. Regarding this point, fearing that the vice captain would be burdened, Dai Lizi and the people from the headquarters specially talked to him. If it didn't work, they would be transferred to another fleet to take up the post. Fortunately, the deputy captain was very open-minded and readily accepted the arrangement from his superiors. In addition to being an honorary admiral, Xiong Hui is also the acting captain of the Flying Bear, the acting commander of the Flying Bear fleet, and the #1 pilot of the Flying Bear mecha. This can be regarded as a perfect result. And everyone in the headquarters also expressed their acceptance of such an appointment, and announced such results to the entire New Gaia Navy. Xiong Hui therefore became the youngest general in the history of New Gaia, although it was an honorary one. He is an honorary general and essentially a second lieutenant, so his salary is based on the standard of a second lieutenant. After the decision was made, Xiong Hui returned to the Flying Bear and officially took office. The Flying Bear also continued to develop and grow under his leadership. Chapter 896 Admiral Flying Bear 8. The Flying Bear has been undergoing maintenance, reconstruction and experimental testing. This process took 4 years. It just so happened that Xiong Hui also spent 4 years completing the Network Battleship University, received a bachelor's degree, and went on to start a master's degree. He also uses online learning to study, and goes to school regularly for face-to-face teaching. This may take a little longer, but that is not important. What is important is that he can always work on the Flying Bear. For years have passed, and Xiong Hui is now 24 years old. He has been the honorary admiral captain of the Flying Bear, and his military rank has been promoted to a de facto lieutenant. 24 years old. 2924. On this day, Xiong Hui came to Ina #1 and walked on the deck of Ina #1. From time to time, officers and soldiers of all ranks would salute when they saw him, and Xiong Hui nodded in return. Although he was actually a lieutenant, he still had the rank of general on his uniform, so someone with a lower rank would definitely have to salute. It's just that although he enjoys the courtesy of an admiral, he is treated like a lieutenant. But he walked all the way to the hibernation laboratory, stood in front of Bao Ran's hibernation barn, lowered his head, and looked at Bao Ran lying in the transparent cabinet. It's been 900 years, and she's still such a teacher. Xiong Hui faced Bao Ran, who was sleeping in the cabinet, and whispered, it's been 8 years. I've been awake for 8 years. But you're still asleep. I'm 24 years old now, and I'm already as old as you. But I'm still used to calling you Teacher Bao. You know, although you are a teacher, I have always liked you very, very much. Until now. I don't know when you will wake up. I like a lot of money, but it's still not enough. I will continue to like a lot of money. If you don't wake up before I am 30, I will choose to be with you. You hibernate together. And the moment you wake up, I wake up again. Hey, I just don't know if you will like me too. I was 8 years younger than you then, but I've grown up now. Before hibernation, Xiong Hui was 16 years old, and Bao Ran was 24 years old. But he was 8 years younger than her soon. Teacher Bao, I really like you. But he wanted to say that Hu Kuei had been waiting for him for the past 8 years. He wanted to reject her. But he didn't know how to reject her. But he didn't know that Hu Kuei was standing not far behind him at this moment, in a corner of the hibernation laboratory, watching her silently. But Xiong Hui didn't say any more. His sixth sense told him that someone behind him was secretly observing him. Since mastering the power of telepathy, his insight ability has become significantly stronger, feeling that someone was behind him. And it was a very familiar person. He slowly turned around. When he saw Hu Kuei, he was about to say something. Suddenly, the battleship jolted violently. Hu Kuei exclaimed, and Xiong Hui almost stood still. The bumps continued, and loud roaring noises continued. Xiong Hui shouted, Xia Kui, we may be under attack. Hurry up and find the Weishenkang. Sister Ran. The individual soldier computer AI replied, Brother, I'm here. Find out the situation immediately. Okay, brother. We are conducting an intelligence search. We have found out the situation. There is a half-life, and a large number of units have broken into the first ship defense area. Damn it! Xiong Hui yelled. How did they break in? One ship is the First Fleet, which is the core fleet of New Gaia. The commander-in-chief and the members of the command team are all on one ship. The flagship of the ship is the famous Galaxy 1. The alarm bells also began to sound inside the battleship, and a warning sound reminded, Level 1 combat status. Combatants are requested to enter combat positions immediately, and non-combatants are asked to find a nearby life support warehouse to protect themselves. This is not a drill. Warning. Warning. But before the warning was finished, he stopped reading it, not knowing what was going on. Xiong Hui took Hu Kuei and ran away. Where to go? Hu Kuei asked. Find a place to hide first, Xiong Hui said, and at the same time said to the AI, Help me connect to Sister Xiong. Okay, brother. After a while, Sister Xiong's voice came back to her mind. Chief, a ship is under attack. I know. Xiong Huizi replied in his mind. As long as he can connect to the flying bear, he can communicate with the host AI through brain waves, provided that the connection is through a personal computer. Ina number 1 may be controlled from within, Sister Xiong said. Xiong Hui was shocked. Galaxy number 1 was the core of New Gaia. If it was all controlled, wouldn't New Gaia be doomed? The bumps continued. Where Xiong Hui and Hu Kuei were now, they couldn't see outside, so they didn't know what was going on outside. There happened to be a group of life-sustaining warehouses nearby. Xiong Hui pulled Hu Kuei to open the life-sustaining warehouse and said, Go in quickly. What about you? Hu Kuei was nervous. There's been a mutiny. Mutiny? Hu Kuei asked, also extremely surprised. Yes. I'll go take a look. Can you go? I'll go with you. Be obedient. Hide here and don't move. Okay, Xiong Hui said. He knew that Hu Kuei was very stubborn and would definitely go with him. Seeing Hu Kuei's expectant eyes, he hugged her face and looked at her. Hu Kuei also looked at him with a flirtatious look. At that moment, Xiong Hui felt that he had fallen in love with her. At that moment, he felt that waiting for Bao Ran was a fruitless unrequited love. And he felt sorry for Hu Kuei by doing so. Perhaps he should love Hu Kuei more. So, he lowered his head and kissed her hard. Hu Kuei fidgeted with her hands and struggled. But she only struggled for a while before giving up. She also hugged Xiong Hui to welcome this long-lost kiss. Xiong Hui had already pressed the button on the life-sustaining warehouse, pushed Hu Kuei in, closed the door, and turned on the protective function. Hu Kuei was in the cabinet of the Weishenkang, flapping and shouting, Brother Hui, take me there. I'll go with you. Xiong Hui smiled faintly and said, Be obedient. Only if you are safe can I go with peace of mind. Brother Hui, I love you. Xiao Kui. Me too. I love you too. I love you. Without saying it, the bumps became violently heavier. Xiong Hui ignored Hu Kuei and ran towards the conveyor belt. On the way, he connected to the flying bear AI through brain waves. Sister Xiong, listen. Immediately fly over fully armed and ask the entire ship to enter combat status. I want you to join the battle at any time and follow my orders. Yes, Chief. Help me connect with the Queen Mother. Yes, Chief. About a minute later, Annie's voice echoed in her mind. Shall we? Is there a war in the first ship defense zone? Annie used to have telekinesis, but she has lost this ability since she became the queen of the Zerg. Therefore, she communicated with Xiong Hui through Sister Xiong, and her voice was converted into radio waves by Sister Xiong and transmitted to Xiong Hui's mind. Inside, Mom, listen to me. I'm in ENA number 1 right now. I don't know the specific situation yet. I just estimate that there may have been a mutiny on ENA number 1. This should be top secret and cannot be told. If you can dispatch it now, it would be better if a group of soldiers came over. Chapter 897 Admiral Flying Bear 9 New Gaia First Fleet Flagship Galaxy 1 Headquarters Command Module. The Commander-in-Chief and her command team members were surrounded by a group of rebellious officers, all pointing guns at them. Through the huge porthole glass of the command module, one could see outside, full of Half-Life flying saucers. At this moment, the turbulence has stopped, and the entire First Fleet has been controlled by Half-Life, and the news has been blocked, so that no one in the other fleets knows what is happening here. But for something as big as Half-Life's fleet invasion, it's impossible for other defense zones not to know about it. So a large number of new Gaia fleets are coming. But in the command cabin, Dai Lizzie glared at the rebels. And the leader of the rebels was a 5-star general named Tef, who was in his 60s. Tef pointed the gun at Delis and said, "Order to surrender and hand over the highest authority of New Gaia to me." "You traitor," Delis said. "Do you think I will surrender? Hand over New Gaia to you? Then betray me to Half-Life and let humans become slaves of machines? Just keep dreaming," one official scolded. "Despicable, shameless guy who betrays civilization and is willing to be a slave to the machine." Tef raised his gun and with a spray, killed the official who just scolded him. Tef laughed wildly and said, "There is no value in winning people. Only death. Who else dares to resist?" People exclaimed and remained silent. Dai Lizzie glared at him angrily. Tef said, "It doesn't matter. If you don't surrender, I will find a way. There are so many of your classmates here. I will kill one of them in a minute. Do you want to talk back? Oh, by the way, your family will also be here soon. When they arrive, I will take good care of them. Why are you so shameless?" Dai Lizzie scolded. "Why do you treat innocent people?" "Oh, really?" Tef said. "Everyone. Our new Gaia is a huge human civilization with a population of 67 billion. But it has not been controlled by a woman for so many years. That's not all. They actually want a child to be the captain and give him the rank of admiral. Isn't this too funny? Look again. We have been in a stalemate with Half-Life for so many years, and there has been no result. But I have reached a reconciliation with Half-Life. As long as I come to power, there will be no more wars between us and Half-Life. What a good thing this is. That's a thing, isn't it? So Ms. Delis, hand over your authorization. This will be good for you, me, and everyone." After talking, the guards escorted 5 or 6 people in. But they were all Dai Lizzie's family members. Dai Lizzie is 60 years old. The family members brought here include children and grandchildren, as well as her husband. Seeing that her family members were not being escorted, the strong woman Dai Lizzie couldn't help but cry. Facing her family members, she cried and said, "I'm sorry for getting you implicated, but you also know that I am the commander-in-chief, and I must be responsible for civilization. So I can't betray civilization because of you." A girl said, "Grandma, you don't have to feel guilty. We are proud to be your family. We are proud to do something for civilization." But some members of the family were still scared and couldn't help but cry. The girl then scolded, "Why are you crying? Death is final and lighter than a feather. For the honor of the family and the glory of civilization, death is worth it." "Okay, that's good." Suddenly a boy's voice rang out in the family group. It was said by a young man in his 20s. Dai Lizzie looked at him curiously, because there was no one like him in her family. When she took a closer look, it turned out to be Xiong Hui, wear casual clothes and hoodie. Xiong Hui took off his hat and said, "Tef." "Right. Ancestor?" Tef's surprised voice made him grin from ear to ear. "How did you get in?" "I'll answer this question for you later," Xiong Hui said, walked to the corpses lying on the ground, bowed his head in silence for a while, and said, "I'm sorry. I came late and didn't save you. But I don't do it for you. If you pretend like this, I won't be able to get in. But don't worry. I won't let your death be in vain. It's up to you." Tef laughed loudly and was about to shoot. Xiong Hui stretched out his hand towards him, and Tef was controlled by an invisible force. He was unable to move and his body was suspended. He screamed, "How did you do that?" Let me down quickly. Xionghui ignored him and asked, What about the others? Don't trust your weapons and surrender? Those who resist in the corner will die. Tef is the main culprit and will definitely die. If you are beaten, you are an accomplice and you are bewitched by him. As long as you surrender, you will be given a lighter sentence. Am I right? Your Excellency the Commander-in-Chief. Dai Lizi? Dai Lizi quickly shouted. Yes, that's the case. Those who surrender can be given a lighter sentence and will not be punished with death. Those who resist to the end will definitely be punished with death. And their family members will also be stigmatized. After saying this, the other rebels put down their weapons. And Dai Lizi took over the system again. Tef screamed, This is impossible! This is impossible! The rebels were all under control. And control returned to Deliz's hands. An officer said, Your Excellency, radio communications and quantum communications are blocked. And orders here cannot be issued. Tef laughed wildly. The order can't be issued, and other fleets can't support it. You still have one idea. I advise you to surrender to Half-Life. Just as he was talking, another officer said, Sir, there is a communication coming in. It is Half-Life. Dai Lizi hesitated and said, Come in. The screen flickered and some strange patterns appeared. Half-Life is a machine civilization, so the images they transmit are all digital. There is no fixed image, but there is sound. A rough bass said, Daisy, long time no see. Dai Lizi sneered. Half-Life, long time no see. You have evolved again and become more cunning. You actually learned to collude with my people to control my fleet. It's not a big deal. Half-Life, the #1 host of Half-Life, laughed loudly. Thank you, Dai Lizi. We might as well make a deal now. Open the twin galaxies, close your barrier, and I will let you go. What if? Otherwise, I will kill your first fleet. Now it's too easy for me to kill your first fleet. The signal is blocked. Even if your other fleets fly over, they won't be able to respond to you. Although this little friend of yours can understand thoughts, can he alone resist my huge Half-Life fleet? Even if he has the flying bear. So what? Wouldn't he be able to bring him over? Dai Lizi said. Okay, so you have planned it a long time ago. But you have to know my system of New Gaia. Once the first fleet is destroyed, the second fleet will take over New Gaia. So you want defeating me? New Gaia was absolutely impossible at that time. It doesn't matter, Half-Life said. I'll just kill one of your ships and that's it. My requirements are not high. Chapter 898 Flying Bear 10. Faced with a traitor Tef colluding with Half-Life's #1 host Half-Life to create a rebellion, Xionghui put him down at a very small cost. However, we will face a problem next. The #1 battleship Galaxy #1 has its radio and quantum communications blocked, making it unable to establish contact with other ships of the civilization and unable to issue orders. With the collusion of the traitor Tef, both inside and outside, the wormhole was secretly opened, allowing 10 billion Half-Life units to rush in and surround the first fleet. In this case, other fleets would not know the situation and would not dare to fire casually even if they rushed over, in order to prevent a ship from escaping. After the Half-Life expired, a barrier was set up. This is a spherical area with a diameter of more than 90 million kilometers. Within this barrier, other than Half-Life, other units cannot use wormholes to evacuate. So one ship was trapped, or other fleets launched a general attack on Half-Life. But the other fleets could not get the order. In addition, although Half-Life had 10 billion units surrounding one ship, no attack took place, and no ship fought back, which caused confusion to other fleets, and they didn't know what measures to take. Since Half-Life is a machine civilization, its leader must be a computer. And this computer is Half-Life, Half-Life's #1 host computer. Although Tef is controlled, Half-Life is still so arrogant. It is not in New Gaia, so don't worry about its own safety. It also passes its information to a ship through quantum communication. It clearly told the first ship, and told Delis that it could achieve its goal by just killing one ship. As for the 10 billion units it currently stranded in New Gaia, it would not hesitate even if they were all destroyed. So now, for Dai Lizi, it is necessary to eliminate the 10 billion units with a Half-Life on the premise of saving one ship. 10 billion. That is a huge number. And the airspace where a ship is located is densely packed. Xionghui had already had a strategy to deal with Half-Life's arrogance. At this moment, he came to Dai Lizi and whispered a few words to her. Dai Lizi looked at him doubtfully and asked, Is this okay? If you don't try? How do you know it won't work? Xionghui asked with a serious expression. Okay. I believe you, Dialezi said. Half-Live. What? Are you ready to surrender? Half-Live asked. Didn't you say we want to coexist peacefully? Dialezi said. How about giving me half an hour to discuss with the headquarters? Half an hour? Well, okay. Dialezi faced everyone in the headquarters and said, I now announce the appointment of Lieutenant Xionghui as the official captain of the Flying Bear Super Mecha, the #1 pilot, the commander-in-chief, and the leader of the 801st Fleet. Your Excellency, Xionghui said, although everyone was surprised. There was no objection. Dialezi still said seriously, Comrade Xionghui obeys the order. Xionghui immediately saluted with a military salute and said, Here we come! Dialezi stretched out her arm, opened the operation panel of the personal computer on her arm, pressed a few times, and the 3D code model ejected. Here! Scan it, Deli said. The 3D code model is a glowing virtual three-dimensional diagram that contains a lot of information. Xionghui opened the AI panel on his arm, operated the skill, then stretched out his hand to scan the 3D code. There was a beeping sound. An AI sister Rant's voice said, Authorization successful. While everyone was wondering, Dialezi said, I order that Xionghui be appointed as the interim commander-in-chief of the new Gaia Navy, with full authority to issue all instructions. Your Excellency, Xionghui said hesitantly, please accept orders. Yes, Your Majesty the Commander-in-Chief. Online. Half-Live laughed wildly and said, Supporting a stupid kid to rise to power. Dialezi, do you think this is enough? You will inevitably end in failure. Dialezi sneered. Don't worry. Half-Live, isn't there still half an hour? No. Yes. 25 minutes. It doesn't matter. 25 minutes is 25 minutes. Xionghui found a chair and sat down, leaned deeply in it, closed his eyes and rested, which made Half-Live even more arrogant. He laughed and said, See, this is you human little kid. You have already fainted from fright. Xionghui has received the authorization, and now he can command the entire new Gaia Navy. Although radio and quantum communications are blocked and cannot issue instructions through these two methods, he has a way, and that is brain waves. For brain waves, there is no way to block the half-life. Moreover, Xionghui's brain waves are faster than the speed of light, which is equivalent to the soul wave of the Zerg. It is a type of super light tachyon, which is also the only one among the new Gaians. It's called thought power. It looks like he is closing his eyes to rest, but he is actually using his telekinesis to connect to the Flying Bear AI. Sister Bear. Chief, Sister Xiong's voice echoed in his mind. I will first send you a set of authorization codes. Please accept them. Yes, Chief. The authorization code is the 3D code that Dialezi just showed. It was scanned by Xionghui into his personal computer AI. Now that it needs to be sent to the Flying Bear AI, he can only convert this digital authorization code into brain waves and pass it through the telekinesis is transmitted to the Flying Bear AI Sister Xiong. After Sister Xiong receives the authorization code and converts it into digital form, she can issue orders to the entire new Gaia Navy. The authorization code is a 128-digit hexadecimal encryption code that cannot be reversely cracked. If forced to decrypt, the ID will be locked for 30 minutes if it is wrong once. Therefore, it cannot be cracked at all, which also gives the authorization code a complete sense of security. The authorization code cannot be transmitted through the light beam, so the instructions given by the lamp language cannot be done. All of this was considered in advance by Half-Life #1 host Kafriv and the traitor Tef, unable to issue an order, and launching a mutiny after Xionghui arrived at Galaxy #1. They cooperated internally and externally, and let the Half-Life fleet come in, just enough to eliminate even Xionghui. They know how powerful the Flying Bear is. Without Xionghui, the Flying Bear would be just a decoration, since the Flying Bear cannot be destroyed. Let's kill its pilot. Dialezi is not an idiot. She has clearly seen the conspiracy of Half-Live and Tef. She assessed the situation and made a temporary selection. But Half-Live never expected that it could block radio and quantum communications. But it could not block telekinesis waves. Telekinesis waves, which the Zerg call soul waves, are superluminal tachyons. And of course, they cannot be shielded. But it was said that Xionghui closed his eyes and rested. And everyone was confused. One officer said, Your Excellency, you appointed him. But why did he go to sleep? As he was about to push him to wake him up, Dialezi stopped him and said, Don't wake him up. Just when everyone was confused, Xionghui disappeared under everyone's noses. Chapter 899 Admiral Flying Bear 11. Just when everyone was confused, Xionghui disappeared under everyone's noses. He grew up in front of everyone in a very peculiar way. First, a 2-meter-high oval circle appeared in front of him, and liquid is constantly flowing out of this oval circle. Xionghui opened his eyes, stood up, and quickly entered the oval circle in front of everyone. And then, the circle disappeared with him, leaving liquid on the floor. It turns out that this liquid is deep-sea liquid, and this oval circle is a wormhole. If calculated this way, the other end of the wormhole may be in the deep-sea cabin of the Flying Bear. Otherwise, there would not be so much deep-sea liquid flowing out. Everyone was wondering when they saw the space, radiating light, and countless particle beams shining densely towards the Half-Life fleet. From time to time, enemy flying saucers were hit and exploded, turning into fireballs, which were brilliant in the space. Bloom. Dai Lizi realized that the friendly forces had launched a counterattack, and loudly ordered, "Everyone is in position. Start fighting, and use all your strength to destroy all enemy forces." If you can look here from space 100 million kilometers away from Galaxy 1, you can see countless new Gaia fleets rolling over, surrounding the Half-Life fleet of 10 billion units. This is a huge interstellar battlefield that stretches to a diameter of 100 million kilometers. So what if there are 10 billion units of enemies? New Gaia has dispatched a fleet of trillions of units to encircle and suppress it, vowing to annihilate it all. The total population of New Gaia is 67 billion, and the military-civilian ratio is 1:10, which means there is an army of 6.7 billion people, which is the current New Gaia Navy. Among the 6.7 billion people in the army, the main ones are mechas, and there are 670 million mecha pilots. In other words, for every mecha pilot, there must be 9 people to provide post-stage guarantees and battlefield command and other tasks for a period of time. Serve. Among the 670 million pilots, the proportion of warrior-level pilots is 80% plus, and the approximate number is 540 million. A warrior-level pilot pilots a warrior-level mecha. The attack drone load capacity of a warrior-level mecha is 10,000. In other words, the combat unit of a warrior-level mecha is 10,000. Then the combat power of 540 million warrior-level mechas is 5.4 trillion units, or 5.4 trillion units. In addition to mechas, there are also fixed battleships of various types. The so-called fixed battleships refer to the fact that these battleships cannot deform like mechas, so they are called fixed battleships. Mechas are deformable and can switch between fighter planes, ships, and battle armors, robots, as desired. In addition to the 5.4 trillion units of mecha combat power, plus these battleships and other combat units, the total combat power of New Gaia is about 10 trillion. 10 trillion. That is, 10 trillion. If New Gaia can come into contact with Demon Sword Blood Dance at this time, then the combined power of Demon Sword and Blood Dance will be beyond their reach. Without further ado, it is said that after Xionghui obtained the authorization code, he issued an order through telekinesis and mobilized 1/10 of the combat power of the entire New Gaia, a total of 1 trillion units, with an overwhelming advantage of 100:1, encircling and annihilating the Half-Life enemy forces, vowing to destroy them all. Not only that, but a big guy also suddenly joined the battlefield. But it was officially the Super Mecha Flying Bear. Once this big guy joins the battlefield, he can flexibly move up and down and fly left and right in the battlefield, releasing 150 million attack drones. Under the control of the main body of the Flying Bear mecha, he roams around the enemy's territory wantonly. Among the aircraft, the situation was like breaking bamboo, as if they were in a deserted area. After the enemy's fleet encountered it, it was like falling apart in half, and was quickly consumed. A ship here also fought back under the command of Dai Lizi. A normal war would end in less than 10 minutes. Half-Live on the line shouted wildly, "No! How is this possible?" Dai Lizi laughed and said, "You are just a machine. You will never understand us humans." However, it is said that on the Feixiong battleship, the central deep-sea cabin only contained 75% of the deep-sea liquid. It turns out that when the wormhole was constructed just now, 25% of the deep-sea liquid flowed to the opposite side. That is, to the command module of Galaxy 1. Inside, it is also being cleaned by staff at the moment. If quantum communication is blocked, then the wormhole cannot be successfully constructed. However, what Xionghui created this time was a telepathy wormhole. This is also the first time that New Gaia has used this kind of wormhole, because telepathy is faster than the speed of light. It is he was not blocked by the Half-Life. So he was able to successfully create the wormhole. It's just that the wormhole is too small. And it has to be created from a deep-sea chamber. So it brings a large pool of deep-sea liquid with it. But saying that the battle is over. The flying bear recalled all the drones. Xiong Hui came out of the deep-sea cabin, holding onto the wall and coughing hard. It turned out that he was in the deep-sea chamber without wearing a diving suit or oxygen equipment. He relied entirely on the air stored in the space left by 25% of the deep-sea liquid to breathe. Due to the rush, there was no time to put on these. Not even the goggles. Several officers came over and handed him towels to wipe off. There was still deep-sea fluid dripping on his body. "Your Excellency, the great Commander-in-Chief," Xiong Hui said. A resident official pushed a chair, and he sat down. Since the battle was over, and all the 10 billion units invaded by the enemy had been wiped out, communication with the first ship was restored. A virtual screen appeared next to her, with Dia Lizzie on the screen, saying, "Xiong Hui, you did a good job." Xiong Hui said, "It's okay. Your Excellency, how much are our battle losses?" "It's being counted," Dia Lizzie said. "But the prediction is not very big." He sighed and said, "I didn't expect that our system still has such a big loophole. It seems that it needs to be properly maintained. Xiong Hui, you have made the most important contribution this time. Without you, the ship would be in danger." Xiong Hui said, "This is what I should do. I am also a member of New Gaia. I just like people to accept me and stop treating me as their ancestor. By the way, I want to come over again." "Are you coming over again?" Dia Lizzie asked. "Yes. I'll go check on Hukue. He's still on the Ina number 1. Before the war broke out, Xiong Hui had no time to take care of Hukue. So he asked him to find a nearby survival warehouse to take shelter. He was a little worried about her. The battle was over. Why didn't he contact him? So he went to find her. Okay. Then please pay attention to safety. Galaxy 1 has also received a lot of trauma and is being repaired everywhere. Let me help you find her." After disconnecting, Xiong Hui looked around and saw 2 orderlies standing beside him, and asked curiously, "What are you doing here?" "General, we are your orderlies," the soldier replied. Xiong Hui patted his forehead and remembered that he was now an official general. So New Gaia immediately assigned him 2 orderlies. "Okay. Take me to Tiangang quickly. I'm going to Galaxy 1. "Yes, General." Chapter 900 Admiral Flying Bear 12. Galaxy number 1. Central Hospital. Fukue was lying on the bed with bruises all over her body, receiving infusions and connecting medical equipment. "Dying," a nurse on the side persuaded and said. "You can only save your name if you do it quickly. You can't delay it any longer." Fukue shook her head, her eyes wandering. Xiong Hui finally broke in and held Hukue's hand. Hukue shed tears and said with difficulty, "Brother Hui, don't say anything." Xiong Hui said, "Actually, I also like you. Cheer up." "Okay?" Fukue asked. "You love me, right?" "Yes." Xiong Hui nodded and said, "I love you. Don't force yourself." "I'm not forcing you. Get better quickly, and I'll marry you." Fukue showed a satisfied smile, and then said, "Promise me, if I wake up first, you will marry me. And if Baoran wakes up first, you will marry her. Xiaokue, promise me." Xiong Hui nodded. "Okay, I promise you." Fukue closed her eyes with satisfaction, and the nurse quickly pushed her to do the hibernation experiment. Xiong Hui called the attending doctor and asked about Hukue's condition. The military doctor also looked at Xiong Hui with great confusion, and then said, "Chief, Hukue is too seriously injured. It is difficult to save her with the current medical conditions. Even if she can be saved, she is still a disabled person. So the best way is just hibernate and wake her up later when conditions are met." Xiong Hui nodded and said, "So that's it. I understand." Seeing Hukue being sent to hibernate, Xiong Hui sighed and went to find Bao Ran. Previously, when Xiong Hui went to the Ina number 1 headquarters, he placed Hukue in a nearby life-sustaining warehouse. As a result, Hukue was worried about Xiong Hui. Not long after Xiong Hui left, she ran out of the life-sustaining warehouse and went to the headquarters to find him alone. Then a war broke out, and Galaxy 1 was violently attacked by Half-Life. The shield was penetrated in many places, causing many cabin sections to be penetrated and damaged, and causing many casualties, including Hukue. If Hukuei stayed in the hibernation cabin that Xionghui arranged for him in advance, nothing would happen. Otherwise, Xionghui would feel very guilty. The current situation is that Hukuei's injury is extremely serious. If he really needs to be saved, he can be saved, but amputation may be necessary. This Hukuei is young, good-looking, and very fond of beauty. How can she bear the pain of amputation? So the best way is to hibernate and see if she can save her legs during hibernation. In this way, Hukuei was sent to hibernate. When Hukuei was sent to the life-sustaining warehouse, the section where he was located happened to be where the cryonics department of the central hospital was located. In other words, Bao Ran should be fine. However, Xionghui was still worried. After placing Hukuei, he got up and went to the hibernation laboratory of the cryogenic department. On the way to the cryogenics department, there were many damages, and it was difficult to walk. There was also a section of the cabin that was completely exposed to space. Even if it was protected by a shield, it could not escape the air. So this section was completely blocked, isolated. If you want to get there, you can only get there by ferry. So we came to the fractured cabin, entered the temporary airlock, boarded a nearby ferry ship, flew over the fractured layer, arrived at the opposite side, then disembarked, entered the temporary airlock on the opposite side, and entered the opposite cabin. After much wandering, I finally came to the hibernation laboratory and found the freezer where Bao Ran was. I saw Bao Ran still lying quietly in the cabinet. Nothing unusual. Xionghui also felt a little relaxed. Standing in Bao Ran's freezer, Xionghui silently received. Teacher Bao, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Today I actually fell in love with Hukuei. At that moment, I felt that I loved her. I know I shouldn't be like this, but she was dying at the time. I looked at her so pitifully, and I didn't want to let her down. So I told her that I loved her and promised her that if she wakes up before you, I'm going to marry her. I'm sorry. I know it shouldn't be like this. But, Teacher Bao, can you forgive me? Hey, you don't like me, so who am I to ask for your forgiveness? But, Teacher Bao, I still like you very, very much. If you really wake up first, what should I do? You'd better wake up quickly. After some talk, Xionghui left the cryonics department and went to the headquarters of Galaxy No. 1 again to see Dai Lizi. When he arrived at the headquarters, he was warmly welcomed by the people from the headquarters, which made Xionghui feel a little embarrassed. Your Excellency, Xionghui said, I can hand over the full strength of the temporary commander-in-chief. You can continue to be in front of me. No, Your Excellency, Xionghui said. One country cannot have two masters. I only need my Flying Bear General. Since then, Xionghui's nickname, Flying Bear Admiral, has been widely used. Dai Lizi took advantage of the situation and said, That's okay. Xionghui, you have to work hard in the future. New Gaia still depends on you. It depends on each of us. Dai Lizi convened a meeting in the headquarters conference room, including Xionghui. As for other fleet commanders who could not come, the meeting was held by telephone conference. The details of the handling of this rebellion were reported. The first offender, Tef, was sentenced to death and will be executed soon. Others will be dealt with accordingly according to their severity. And the entire civilization notified and commended Xionghui. Xionghui said a little embarrassedly, This is not good. I am still too young. Also, he is only 24 years old now. Having such a high status and such a high honor at this age makes him feel a little at a loss. Dai Lizi disagreed and said, This is how I will establish you as a model for the entire civilization, so that everyone in the entire civilization will want to learn from you, and let every young person dream of becoming you. I want to inspire the morale and fighting spirit of everyone in the entire civilization and strengthen our ideas. It won't be long before we can turn defeat into victory, break out of the twin galaxies, eliminate Half-Life, and gallop across the galaxy. Xionghui nodded and said, It turns out that you want to establish a heroic image. If this is helpful to the development of civilization, then I am willing. Dai Lizi said, Next, you will become a public figure, and reporters will interview you. Your deeds may also be written into documentary literature, or it may be made into a film and television series. This is all possible. But stop it. As long as it's for the sake of civilization, we can do anything. Right? Yes, Your Excellency, including sacrifice. I have a question. Dai Lizi said, You said before that it was possible to train a large number of War Master pilots. Is this true? That's right, Xiong Hui said. And this possibility is still very high. Chapter 901 Admiral Flying Bear, 13. Inspired by a lot of things from the Zerg, such as soul waves and insect chrysalis purification, Xiong Hui realized that there is still room for further upgrades to the highest level warrior class, which is the War Master class. This requires the help of the Zerg. Otherwise it will be difficult to do this. In order to achieve this goal, part of it must first be sent to the Zerg for testing. 1,000 warrior level pilots were selected in advance for experiments, and were sent to the Zerg Annie. They were each wrapped in insect chrysalis for 3 days of purification, and comprehension spores were injected into the insect chrysalis. After many tests, each warrior level pilot needs to undergo 5 to 20 purifications depending on individual circumstances. And it is a white tiger level purification. The white tiger level purification time is 3 days, with 3 days of rest. So the purification cycle is 6 days. So the purification cycle of 5 to 20 times ranges from 30 to 120 days. Xiong Hui also wants to teach everyone his experience based on his own experience, so that everyone can master it faster and get the War Commander's driver's license faster. The War Master's license, also known as the A license, is the most advanced type of pilot's license. As for the War Master level mecha, the starting number of drones is 100,000, and as the pilot's ability improves, this number can be increased. Fully immersed deep sea liquid is also being developed, and it can be completed and put into use in 3 months. During the past 3 months, Xiong Hui also continued to work on the magic box with the Flying Bear, and continued to conduct flight tests and exercises. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. The first batch of experimental War Master class mechas also passed the test, and came to the Flying Bear fleet. And the first batch of War Master class mechas built for them were also equipped. At the same time, fully immersed deep sea fluids were also developed and installed. On the day of testing the deep sea liquid, Xiong Hui came to the deep sea cabin, opened one of the hatches, and faced the deep sea liquid inside. There was still a little resistance in his heart, but for the sake of civilization, Xiong Hui also planned to risk it. Turn around, face away from the deep sea liquid, take a deep breath, and fall back. Since it is fully immersed in deep sea fluid, no breathing equipment is required, just a diving suit. Not only is the number 1 pilot on the Flying Bear fully immersed in deep sea fluid, but the other 1,000 War Master class mechas in the queue also use full immersion deep sea fluid in order to achieve better results. But it was said that when Xiong Hui came down, he fell into the deep sea liquid, and his whole body was immersed in the deep sea liquid. The moment he entered the deep sea liquid, he didn't dare to open his eyes or breathe. I opened my eyes first, and my eyes quickly adapted. Through the window, I could see the expectant and worried eyes of the people watching outside. I never dared to breathe, but running in the deep sea liquid was so suffocating that I couldn't help but start to inhale. Immediately, the deep sea liquid entered the nasal cavity and poured into the lungs. You can imagine the discomfort, which made him cough hard. However, after this cough, a large amount of deep sea fluid entered his mouth and was swallowed into his stomach. My stomach felt like it was churning. The deep sea fluid inhaled into his lungs also made him suffer. After a lot of struggling, I finally got used to it and could slowly breathe easily. You can't speak in water, so through brain waves, Xiong Hui conveys what he wants to express to Sister Xiong, who then converts it into sound and plays it in the loudspeaker. So Xiong Hui, who was in the deep sea liquid at this moment, said, "Are all the pilots of the War Master mecha in the deep sea liquid?" Sister Xiong replied, "Yes, Chief. All the pilots of the Flying Bear fleet have entered the deep sea fluid and are ready." Xiong Hui said, "All the first level combatants in our Flying Bear have entered their respective deep sea cabins, and all other personnel have evacuated." "Yes, Chief." After the order was issued, the entire Flying Bear began to become busy. The so-called first level combatants are basically the gunners at various gun positions. These gunners must also be soaked in total immersion in deep sea liquid, and must be soaked in total immersion in deep sea liquid. And you cannot soak in semi-immersed deep sea liquid, let alone not soak in semi-immersed deep sea liquid. A life-sustaining chamber is definitely not possible, and there are no measures, so it is absolutely impossible. Xiong Hui's requirement is that all personnel in the Flying Bear must accept the ultra-high acceleration of high-speed flight, so there is no other way except full immersion in deep sea fluid. The gunner is fully immersed in deep sea liquid, and can also control the gun position to attack the enemy. As for the other positions, The deep-sea liquid equipment has not yet been designed, so they must all be cleared out. Otherwise they will all be crushed into meat pies when the high-speed flight accelerates. Except for the number 1 pilot and gunner. Everyone else began to leave in the spaceship. While they were evacuating, Xionghui gave instructions to other War Master level mechas, and they all came closer and surrounded it. The Flying Bear is a superstar level unit with a length of 120 kilometers. 1,000 War Master class mechas in the fleet are all 5 kilometers in length. Although this number is much smaller than the Flying Bear, it is still a very large existence. 1,000 War Master level aircraft. No, they should be used ships, because they are already kilometer level, and in human civilization, they are called dwarf level aircraft. Therefore, the War Master level mecha is also called a dwarf star. As for mechas of the Warlord level and below, even the dwarf star level is not enough to qualify. The staff inside the Flying Bear and the staff inside other mechas were also evacuated, and 1,000 War Master class ships also flew over, tightly surrounding the Flying Bear. Xionghui looked at the data and said, "Have all the personnel who should be evacuated been evacuated? Are the war commanders ready? We are about to start transforming." Now these 1,001 mechas are all in the apocalypse of battleships. So what Xionghui calls transformation is that they are about to transform into robots. In the transforming robot mode, there is no artificial gravity inside the mecha, nor are there any artificial auxiliary equipment such as oxygen, air pressure, temperature, etc. Because the pilots soaked in deep-sea fluid don't need these. After everyone came back and agreed, Xionghui began to give instructions, and everyone transformed. With the end of the transformation, a huge robot and 1,000 small robots around it appeared in space. The small robot looked so small in front of the big robot. "Everyone is here! Follow me and fly!" After Xionghui said that, he drove the Flying Bear, suddenly accelerated, and flew out quickly, with 1,000 small robots following closely behind. The flight data has been synchronized, so no matter how the big robot flies, the small robot will not be lost. And because the small robot is small and carries less drones, deep-sea fluids and related equipment, it is faster. Xionghui gave instructions while flying. Formation number 7. Continue to accelerate. Chapter 902 Admiral Flying Bear 14. In 2924, Xionghui was 24 years old. Bao Ran is still in hibernation. He was 26 years old before hibernation, and he is still 26 years old after more than 900 years. And now even Hukue has entered hibernation. He got Xionghui without any relatives. Now, he has no ties for the time being. He plans to let go and try his best to win. Since he has the honor to become the youngest general in the history of New Gaia, he must make some earth-shattering achievements. Otherwise, how can he be worthy of the title of Flying Bear General? The first, lead group, test was a complete success. 1,000 War Master level pilots could easily fly their respective War Master level mechas, and could easily release and recover their 100,000 offensive carriers, UVs, and can control them to fly freely in space. Flight includes various movements and formations, as well as formation changes and formation switching. Drones don't just fly. They also have to fight. And there are often hundreds of millions or trillions of drones on the battlefield. This requires reasonable coordination. So an excellent pilot is so important. Therefore, during the first team test, we also conducted a carrying out simulated battle to simulate how to break out of an encirclement when one's own side was severely damaged. The exercise was also very successful. After the exercise, New Gaia began to cultivate and train new War Master level pilots in batches. All War Master level pilots must be assessed and selected from among Warlord level pilots. And all Warlord level pilots who want to be assessed and promoted to War Master level need to go to the Zerg for several White Tiger level insect pupil purifications. After purification, you gain the ability to communicate with brain waves, which is commonly known as telepathy. Compared to the soul waves of the Zerg, purification also has a success rate in obtaining telekinesis. Since there is a success rate, there must be a failure rate. Therefore, many warrior level pilots who participate in purification will be eliminated unsuccessfully. This ratio is probably around 10%. In other words, 90% of those who participate in the purification experiment will pass. And then, they can undergo War Master level training and assessment. This is not over yet. Full immersion deep sea liquid testing is still needed. Some people will not be able to adapt to this full immersion deep sea liquid and will not be able to control the War Master class mecha. The War Master class mecha will become the mainstream mecha in New Gaia in the future. So every pilot must be able to adapt to this deep-sea liquid. However, the proportion of this kind of incompatibility is still very small. Less than 1% in total. Regarding the fully immersed deep-sea liquid, under Xiong Hui's initiative, New Gaia plans to promote it throughout the Navy, and plans to adopt dual modes of fully immersed and semi-immersed that can switch between all life-sustaining tanks. This also satisfies the worries of some people who cannot adapt to full immersion. But full immersion, while inconvenient, is safer. While training War Master level pilots on a large scale, Xiong Hui planned to launch an attack on the enemy. He told Dai Lizi his thoughts, and also told him another idea. At the INHA No. 1 headquarters, Dai Lizi secretly summoned Xiong Hui. Dai Lizi looked at the young man in front of her, smiled with satisfaction, and said, "Admiral Xiong Hui, you are worthy of being an ancestor." Xiong Hui smiled awkwardly and said, "Your Excellency, please don't laugh at me." No, absolutely not," Dai Lizi said. "Without your arrival, the Flying Bear has been sleeping for 900 years, and we don't know when it will be activated. Without your arrival, I, New Gaia, don't know when it would have been possible to break the record of 0 war commanders. Civilization will always progress. If it weren't for me, others would do the same. It's just a matter of time. I have an important thing to tell you this time. After the last battle, many things have changed. Because I was too busy, I didn't bother to come here." "Oh, is it something very important?" "That's right," Xiong Hui said. "Because I'm not entirely sure. Your Excellency, Commander-in-Chief, do you still remember that I suddenly used a wormhole to leave the Galaxy No. 1 and return to the Flying Bear?" "Yes. I have been feeling very puzzled. After thinking about it carefully, I don't want to trigger a wormhole. It's an induced wormhole," Xiong Hui said. "But it's neither like the Zerg's induced wormhole that uses quantum flying insects for positioning, nor the one like us humans that use entangled particles for positioning. It's just that in desperation, I use telekinesis to locate the target point." Dai Lizi paced, thinking, and then said for a while, "To activate the wormhole, there must be something to locate the target point. Either a quantum flying insect or an entangled particle. Telepathy." Dai Lizi still has doubts about telepathy. So at this time, there will be such doubts. "Tachyon," Xiong Hui said. "Ninja is a type of tachyon. Photons and tachyons are both particles. So telekinesis is also a type of particle." "Well, then," Xiong Hui said, "for 900 years, we have been studying jump wormholes. But there has been no result. The so-called jump wormhole is the highest level of wormhole, more advanced than the activation wormhole. Exciting a wormhole requires corresponding particles and an entangled state at the target end for positioning. The corresponding particles of the Zerg are quantum flying insects. The telepathy wormhole mentioned by Xiong Hui is also an excitation wormhole in this way. What locates the target point is the superluminal tachyon, which is telepathy." But I heard Xiong Hui say, "But with the telekinesis wormhole, I think this can be a temporary substitute for the jump wormhole." When she heard that there could be a temporary substitute for the jump wormhole, Dai Lizi immediately became excited and asked excitedly, "Tell me about it. Please tell me quickly." Xiong Hui said calmly, "Look, Commander-in-Chief, the Zerg can use soul waves, and I can use telekinesis. Both of these things are superluminal tachyons. The speed of my mother's soul wave can reach 500 seconds. I don't know how many pieces of my telekinesis power there are yet. When will I test it? Now let's talk about this battle. Galaxy 1's radio and quantum communications were blocked, but my telekinesis was not blocked." "You mean?" Dai Lizi pointed at Xiong Hui. Her expression seemed to have a sudden realization. "Use your telekinesis to send the target end of the wormhole out?" Xiong Hui nodded and said, "Yes, I have this idea. For so many years, our twin galaxies have been blocked by half-life, and neither quantum communication nor the wormhole can exit. But it's different now. Mind power can go out. Although the Zerg soul wave can also go out. The soul wave can only be used during purification. So the Zerg has never been able to use the soul wave to launch wormholes. Then my telekinesis can go out, and I can use telekinesis to launch the wormhole. But the current problem has two aspects. One is that it requires huge energy support, which goes without saying. The second problem is how to expand the wormhole to the point where it can pass through the warship." Chapter 903 Comprehensive Counterattack 1. How to use telekinetic wormholes. That is, superluminal tachyons to excite the wormholes and expand them so that warships can pass through them, is the next topic to be studied. But it's not a big problem, because the current wormholes can reach a diameter of more than 1,000 kilometers, and even the largest supergiant-class battleships can pass through. But this is not a big problem. As long as you have development ideas in this area, pass it theoretically, and go through several experiments, you can basically succeed. The second thing that Xiong Hui came to see Dai Lizi was that he wanted to initiate a battle. After thinking about it for a while, Dai Lizi said, "No rush. No rush. Since we are going to fight, we must take insurance. Think about it. The enemy is machine civilization, and we are human civilization. Its battle losses are only a few at any time. A computer. But we are different. What we sacrifice is a living life." Xiong Hui nodded and listened to her continue. Dai Lizi said, "Develop your large-scale telepathy wormhole, and then we can launch a surprise attack on it. Wouldn't that be more effective?" Xiong Hui thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Dai Lizi added, "Queen and knows soul wave reconnaissance and has already detected the enemy's general deployment area. Before launching the attack, let her conduct reconnaissance. I believe we will get results. Unexpected results. Once the plan is finalized, deployment begins. The telepathy wormhole project is highly confidential. Only a few senior people know about it, including Xiong Hui, and a group of experts are organized to conduct research. Everything else is proceeding step by step. Half-Life will occasionally send some small-scale units over to carry out harassment, and all small-scale frictions will always occur from time to time. Due to the last rebellion, New Gaia has begun to improve the security of the system from top to bottom to prevent such an incident from happening again." After another year of development, in 2925, when Xiong Hui was 25 years old, the research and development of telekinetic wormholes finally achieved a breakthrough. Wormhole delivery equipment was installed on the mecha. When the wormhole needed to be activated, the mecha, the host master, uses telekinesis to deliver. However, the realization requires that the super light speed generated by telekinesis be quickly delivered to the target area to play a positioning role, so that telepathy wormholes can be launched. In this year, the number of Warmaster-level pilots has exceeded 200 million, which is a very rapid rate. Warmaster-class mechas can carry 100,000 offensive ship-based drones, and pilots can freely control these drones. And 100,000 is just the starting point for the Warmaster class. Through continuous research and development, the Warmaster class has also begun to have 4 levels. These 4 levels are set according to 5 times the unit. A 1-star Warmaster costs 100,000 units. A 2-star Warmaster costs 500,000. A 3-star Warmaster costs 2.5 million. And a 4-star Warmaster costs 12.5 million. But currently, there are only 1-star Warmasters, and 2-star ones are difficult to achieve. This is just a default. The 1-star Warmaster is once again divided into 4 levels, and each level increases in steps of 100,000 units. They are 1-star level 1 to 1-star level 4 or 100,000 to 400,000 respectively. There are currently very few 1-star and 2-star ones, but it is said that the Feixiong fleet, in addition to the Feixiong mecha battleship piloted by Xiong Hui, is also equipped with 1,000 Warmaster-level mechas. The Warmaster-class mecha is currently the largest mecha besides the Flying Bear. It is large enough, so it is equipped with many military units inside, mainly artillery, intelligence and engineering. The Flying Bear is the largest, so it has more personnel, except for the main engine pilot. All mecha personnel must be able to use full immersion in deep-sea fluid. Those who cannot be used in full immersion in deep-sea fluid will not only be unable to be pilots, but will not even be allowed to become mechas. As for fixed battleships and other unit vehicles, there are no such high requirements, and both fully immersed and semi-immersed are acceptable. The current Flying Bear fleet, the flagship mecha, the Flying Bear, has 1.5 billion combat units, and 1,000 Warmaster-level mechas, each with 100,000 combat units, totaling 100 million combat units. The entire mecha fleet has 1.6 billion combat units. This scale can be increased, but this will be gradually increased in the future. Before, Xiong Hui measured the speed of his telekinesis, which was about 100 seconds, which is 100 times the speed of light. When humans launch wormholes, the entangled particles that need to be positioned have a speed of light, which is 1s. The Zerg's quantum flying insects are 0.5 times the speed of light, which is 0.5s. Although Annie's soul wave is the fastest, reaching 500s. It cannot be used to launch a wormhole. There are currently only 3 forms of stimulating wormholes. One is the Zerg's quantum flying insects. The other is human entangled particles. And the third is Xiong Hui's superluminal tachyon telekinesis. Before the upcoming battle, Annie had already conducted a careful reconnaissance of the enemy through soul waves. About 15 light-years away from the binary galaxy, there is a single star system called RS Sol, where a huge team of half-lives, about 1 trillion units, occupies. Although there are 10 trillion units, it is only a small part of the massive units of half-life. If you want to go to RS Sol, the only way now is to pass through the telekinesis wormhole. And Xiong Hui's telekinesis speed is 100s. So if he wants to put a wormhole on Sol, he has to let him telekinetically fly 20 light-years. Arrive at Sol. According to his 100s speed, this time would take about 2.5 months. This is obviously impossible. There is no way that he can sit there and do nothing for 2.5 months without eating or drinking. So I came up with a more similar method, which is to jump towards the target RS Sol star bit by bit. The specific method is to first select a certain point as the first jumping point. This point is about 100 billion kilometers away from the double galaxy. Why is it 100 billion kilometers? Because Xiong Hui uses his telekinesis to determine the jumping location. He can only control his telekinesis to fly for an hour, and he won't be able to hold on any longer. As for other pilots, this time will be shorter. So they are basically not used, and only Xiong Hui is used. In 1 hour, the telekinesis power of a tachyon can fly a distance of 100 light-hours. Since it is 100 times the speed of light, it will naturally fly 100 light-hours in 1 hour. And 100 light-hours is roughly equivalent to a distance of 100 billion kilometers, or 670 astronomical units. The diameter of the Kuiper belt is only 200 astronomical units, and the radius is 100. So these 100 light-hours are equivalent to flying out of 6.5 Kuiper belts. Xiong Hui will teleport at a point near the edge of the barrier, and the first jumping point must be scouted first. It must be a place where the half-life is unknown, or there is no half-life total there. This is the first Misty Land. You will stay in the first Misty Land for a period of time, at most half an hour, and then jump to the second Misty Land, and so on. Only by following this general method step by step of going. This process will take about half a year to complete. Chapter 904 Comprehensive Counterattack 2. At Xiong Hui's suggestion, the Supreme Military Joint Conference of Civilization conducted a verification vote, and was finally approved by Commander-in-Chief Dai Lizi. This general offensive was officially ordered and started a month later. The destination of the battle attack, RS Sol, 15 light-years away. How to get there? Go through the telepathic wormhole and jump multiple times. The distance of each jump is 100 light-years. Due to many factors such as the enemy's detection ability, the distance to RS Sol is not a straight line, which means that the entire voyage is much longer than 15 light-years. The preliminary estimate of this voyage is about 17 light-years. Depending on the actual situation, it may be longer. For the time being, it is calculated as 17 light-years. So divide 17 light-years by 100 light-years, which is 1489, or round up to 1500. In other words, it takes 1,500 jumps, or through 1,500 wormholes, to reach the destination. The telekinesis wormhole is not a jump wormhole. It must be positioned first. The so-called positioning is when Xiong Hui first performs a soul wave shuttle. His soul wave speed is only 100s, which is 100 times the speed of light, which is faster than the soul wave of the Zerg, much slower. And he can only use soul wave for an hour at most. Therefore, he can only travel a distance of 100 light-hours in one soul wave travel. Travel 100 light-hours in 1 hour. Locate, build a wormhole, drop the fleet there, and then take a short rest before proceeding to the next wormhole travel. This time period takes about 90 minutes, which is 1.5 hours. 1,500 shuttles is 2,250 hours. This is the total time for traveling through the wormhole. But it cannot be simply divided by 24 to get the number of days, because Xiong Hui is a human being and cannot travel endlessly through telekinesis. After working for a maximum of 12 hours, he has to rest to adjust his physical strength. So he can only work for a maximum of 12 hours in a 24-hour day, calculated according to a shuttle cycle of 1.5 hours. 12 hours is 8 times, which means that a maximum of 8 shuttles can be made in a day. So the total time is 2,250, divided by 1.5 hours, and then divided by 8. The number obtained is 187 days, exactly half a year. Therefore, if we set sail now, it will take half a year to launch a general attack on RS Sol. After everything was ready, A day was chosen and the expedition started. In non-combat mode or high-speed flight mode, the mecha's pilot and mecha members do not need to be fully immersed in deep-sea fluid. So at this moment on the Flying Bear, Xionghui sat firmly in his captain's seat. Since the Flying Bear is a giant Super War Master level mecha, it is huge. Therefore, he cannot be the only pilot on the huge Flying Bear. Instead, there are tens of thousands of crew members, distributed in various parts of the mecha, including the mecha control room where Xionghui is located. There are more than a dozen commanders, who are used to issue instructions to the crew members in all battle positions on the ship, collect intelligence, and convey the orders of the captain Xionghui. Among these commanders was Lieutenant Hukue, connected with the base command, and the people connected included the Supreme Command, including Commander-in-Chief Dai Lizi, and her adoptive mother Annie said, "Shall we? This is your first time to command a large-scale battle. Please pay attention to your safety. Don't worry, Mother," Xionghui said with a smile to Annie on the line. "We are attacking the enemy this time, and it is impossible for him to know the half-life. So this time, I must kill the half-life without leaving any trace behind. But I will also be extra careful." Annie nodded and said, "Okay, in half a year, I will attack with you." The jump time will take at least a year. That's why Annie said this. After finishing talking to Annie, the next person was Dai Lizi. "Your Mightiness, Xionghui," Dai Lizi said, "from the moment you woke up, I could feel that you would be an outstanding person. And the facts prove that I was right. This also requires a talent like you, the Commander-in-Chief," Xionghui replied. "The implication is that he is a 1,000-mile horse, and he does not need to hide his abilities." "Let go and do it," Dai Lizi encouraged. "Yes, Your Excellency." As he prepared to set sail, a row of seats formed a semicircle in front of him. One of the female commanders turned back and looked at him with a smile. Officially Hukue. Xionghui just nodded towards her, and then gave the order. "Target, Misty Land number 1. Start the wormhole shuttle." "Yes." The commanders obeyed and started the corresponding procedures. Misty Land number 1 is the first stop of this operation. It is exactly 100 light-hours away from the starting point of the edge of the double galaxy barrier. The entire point was already positioned by Xionghui through the Soul Wave shuttle last night. So at the beginning of today's operation, there is no need to locate it first, but you can directly open the wormhole and travel through it. The wormhole was quickly built, led by the Flying Bear. 1,000 War Master level mechas teleported through the wormhole and left the twin galaxies. They soon arrived at Misty Land number 1, which was 100 light-hours away from the edge of the twin galaxies. After arriving at the destination, Xionghui issued an order. "Establish a connection with the headquarters. Release the reconnaissance plane, and investigate the surrounding environment to prevent being discovered by the enemy. Although this operation is large-scale, it must be kept top secret. The enemy must not know New Gaia's intentions. Otherwise it may cause unnecessary trouble to this operation." The connection was quickly established. The first person to connect was the headquarters. Xionghui reported the situation here. After learning that number 1 Pyamya number 1 had not discovered the enemy's situation, it explained the initial success of this operation. Dai Lizi expressed congratulations on behalf of the headquarters, and then Xionghui also connected with In. After the connection was completed, there was a 10-minute rest, and then Xionghui used the next hour to conduct Soul Wave Shuttle and start the positioning of the second Misty Land. During the break, Xionghui said, "Everyone stick to their respective positions. Don't relax. Divide into 2 parts, and some people can relax a little." After that, Xionghui leaned on his chair to rest. Hukue stood up, looked back at him, and wanted to come over. But considering that it was working time and there were so many people around, she didn't dare to come. Xionghui looked at her and knew her intention. So he didn't say anything and just pretended not to know. After resting for a while, he issued an order and said, "I will have an hour of soul wave detection time. All personnel must be vigilant and monitor the surrounding space." After that, after looking at Hukue out of the corner of his eye, he stopped talking, closed his eyes, and began to conduct soul wave detection. Soul wave reconnaissance requires going to the second Misty Land. This second Misty Land has been carefully planned in advance. Therefore, Xionghui only needs to reach the soul wave, and if no enemy is found at the destination, he can conduct telepathic positioning in the Misty number 2 place, and then come back and start the second wormhole shuttle. Chapter 905 Finale. I really don't want to be the creator. Sure enough, After 1,500 travels and half a year, we finally arrived at RS Sol, the home base of the half-life of machine civilization. Xiong Hui led his Flying Bear fleet and chose a location far away from the galaxy instead of inside the current galaxy. He then established a quantum connection with New Gaia and built a point-to-point symmetrical wormhole. The equipment has been built in advance. After arriving at the destination, these symmetrical wormhole equipment are placed at the predetermined location, and then wormholes are created and connected. After the connection is successful, a large amount of materials and energy are first transmitted. You must know that wormhole transmission requires a large amount of materials. So a large number of spacecraft equipped with plasma energy have arrived in advance to provide energy for the wormhole built here. Once the wormhole is built and connected to New Gaia, a large number of fleets will be transmitted at any time to prepare for the next attack on the Half-Life Nest. This assembly point is about 100 light-hours away from the RS Sol star, and is called Site A. After everything was ready, New Gaia began to drop a large number of fleets to Site A. All of this was completed unknowingly by Half-Life. When all of them were assembled, the number of New Gaia's fleets assembled at location A had reached 60% of New Gaia's total strength. New Gaia is already planning to defeat Half-Life in one fell swoop. After everyone was assembled, New Gaia A began to conduct a reconnaissance on the RS Sol planet for about a month. And all of this was conducted without Half-Life's knowledge. At the same time, do not forget to defend the New Gaia mainland. A month later, Xiong Hui passed through the Sol wave and made another flight, locating the next target point near the planet of RS Sol. The last wormhole was established, and then the New Gaia army gathered at location A, teleported there one after another, and launched a total attack on the RS Sol star. Half-Life was caught off guard. They had no idea that New Gaia would come with this move. They also really couldn't imagine how New Gaia would break through the barrier and fly out of the New Gaia twin galaxies. Although it was a foreign attack, the war was still very fierce. After all, Half-Life had an absolute advantage in numbers, and Half-Life was able to quickly dispatch fleets scattered in other galaxies back. So the war that took place on RS Sol lasted for a full month. The result of the war was that New Gaia achieved a huge victory at a very small cost, destroying Half-Life's home base on RS Sol in one fell swoop. Because of this war and the huge victory of New Gaia, Xiong Hui was officially appointed as a general. He is also the youngest general in the history of New Gaia. In this battle, although Xiong Hui gained huge gains, he also lost Hukui. After years of contact, from resistance to final acceptance, Xiong Hui was also moved by Hukui's persistence and finally accepted her love. However, it was also at this time that Hukui died in the war. This made Xiong Hui very sad, and he devoted himself to leading New Gaia to destroy the remaining power of Half-Life. Afterwards, the war against the remaining forces of Half-Life continued for another 6 years. It was not until Xiong Hui was 26 years old that Half-Life was completely eliminated, allowing the New Gaia civilization to get rid of the control of the barrier. At the age of 26, Dai Lizhi officially abdicated and strongly recommended Xiong Hui to take over her position, thus becoming the youngest commander-in-chief in the history of New Gaia. It was also the year when Xiong Hui became the new commander-in-chief of Gaia that Bao Ran woke up. Before hibernation, Bao Ran was 24 years old, and Xiong Hui was 16 years old. At this time, Bao Ran's biological age was still 24 years old, but he was 2 years younger than Xiong Hui. After waking up, Bao Ran slowly accepted the reality of interstellar civilization and learned everything about Xiong Hui. The two also became an interstellar couple. Time passed slowly but quickly, and another 59 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, it was 2985 AD. Xiong Hui was 85 years old, and Bao Ran was 83 years old. They were already full of descendants, and 4 generations lived together. New Gaia has also developed into a powerful interstellar civilization, with attributes, human civilization. So far, after the demise of Earth civilization, 3 powerful civilizations with different attributes have developed with Earth civilization as the mother civilization. The magic sword of machine civilization. The supreme commander is Archangel Lu Yi. The Zerg civilization dances with blood, and its supreme commander is Queen Lung Yan. New Gaia of human civilization. The first commander-in-chief Yubin. The current commander-in-chief Xiong Hui. In addition to these 3 major civilizations, there is also an affiliated civilization, which is the Nestor Zerg civilization under New Gaia. The queen is Anne, and Annie is also Lu Yi's grandmother. It has been almost 1,000 years, and Lu Yi finally knows his life experience. Yubin, who was born in 1973, fell in love with Princess N, a planet from the 6 continents of the new Gaia dual system. Before N became a Zerg, she gave birth to Yu Xiaoxin in 1999. Yu Xiaoxin married the painter Ouyang Bin and gave birth to Ouyang Chun. Ouyang Chun died while performing a mission in the two-way system, but his thoughts were retained and uploaded to the machine, which is now Lui. The 3 major civilizations have formally formed an alliance, and the leader of the alliance will take turns to be the commander-in-chief of the 3 major civilizations. It took about another 100 years for Leng Yin to finally find Leng Li and eliminate her. As for launching an eternal war against God-level civilization, it will be 1,000 years later. That is, around 4000 AD. In the 41st century AD, the Interstellar Alliance, led by the Archangel Lui of Machine Civilization, launched a counterattack against Eternity. The war lasted for a full 1,000 years, and it did not end until around the 51st century AD, and Eternity was completely destroyed. During the 1,000-year war with Eternity, the Interstellar Alliance, referred to as the Star Alliance, acquired many God-level technologies, such as jump wormholes, neutron star bombs, space folding, supergravity rays, and so on. Then came the process of conquering the entire Milky Way. Since the Milky Way has more than 400 billion stars, it took 1,000,000 years to conquer the Milky Way. As for the 3 major civilizations, human civilization does not know how many generations have changed. Even the queen of the Zerg civilization has changed for more than 100 generations. Because although the lifespan of the Zerg queen is very long, the longest is only 10,000 years. Since Lui is a digital being, his consciousness has always existed. In 125-6482 AD, the Covenant officially unified the entire galaxy. In order to facilitate travel within the galaxy, the Covenant established 400 trillion pairs of jump wormholes in the galaxy. 1 trillion is 1 trillion. So 400 trillion is 400 trillion. In AD 125-9525, Chongguang, the most powerful temple-level god-level civilization in the Andromeda galaxy, launched an invasion of the Milky Way. The Covenant fought back, and the war lasted for 60 million years. More than 10,000 galaxy-level galaxies were involved in the war. Countless stars were destroyed, and galaxies were annihilated. In AD 64257-123, the heavy light was destroyed, and a total of more than 100 galaxies, including the Milky Way, the Andromeda galaxy, and several other river-level galaxies, merged into one super galaxy. The war was extremely brutal. Billions of civilizations were destroyed, and the human civilization New Gaia and the Zerg civilization Blood Dance fell one after another. Only the magic sword survived. Even so, except for Lui, all the angels of the demon sword civilization were killed. In the entire Star Alliance, only Lui's consciousness still exists, and all lives and consciousnesses in the civilization have perished. The magic sword was also severely damaged, and Lui began his cultivation that lasted for more than 30 million years. Finally, in the year 100 million AD, after 30 million years of development, the magic sword's combat effectiveness reached the level of Ganges sand. This is a very terrifying order of magnitude. It also controls hundreds of millions of river-level galaxies, and its sphere of influence has expanded to a universe with a diameter of 10 billion light-years, and continues to expand. After that, Lui no longer expanded, but continued to explore towards the edge of the universe. The scope of exploration reached 160 billion light-years. In constant exploration, we have never encountered a powerful civilization again. The universe was born 13.8 billion years ago. After Lui experienced about 30 billion years, he suddenly discovered that the universe was collapsing. He understood that the universe was beginning to be destroyed, and he also understood that this destruction would take a long time. Sure enough, after another 45 billion years or so, the universe collapsed to a singularity, and the universe perished. Lui realized this, so he was ready before the universe died. He compressed his consciousness into a chip with a diameter of only 0.1 picometers. He has managed to prevent 0.1 picometer objects from being destroyed when the universe dies. He can only retain this little bit. But just this little bit is enough. After the death of the universe, the entire universe will be empty. It can also be said that the entire universe ceases to exist. I don't know how much time has passed. It can also be said that after the universe dies, time also dies, and all of a sudden time appears again. At the same time as time appeared, the singularity Big Bang also occurred, and the universe was born again. About 4.5 billion years after the birth of the universe, somewhere in the ethereal space of the universe. In the darkness, a tiny light flashed in binary form, which translated to, was the universe born? Am I about to start a new experience again? Hopefully I can drift to a place with great resources, so I can become stronger. The universe was born 4.57 billion years ago. In a chaotic space somewhere in the universe, countless flying saucers were shuttled. In a large flying saucer, the host computer flashed lights. Not far from the flying saucer, a star was born. The host computer of the flying saucer, Louis, said to himself through the current, "Let's call this star the Sun. I will start with a brand new solar system, and then create Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Recreate life and establish civilization. I want to make this universe active again. Looks like I'll be busy for at least 100 million years. Hey, I really don't want to be the creator.